What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Monday show. Welcome aboard, everybody. Couple minutes late getting started. Apologies for that. I was actually just getting stuff updated on the website and then had to run over and wrangle the cat. Figured the Red Sox lineup was worth updating before the show started. There's no Jarren Duran. He just took a 2-game suspension. Also got the Rangers lineup in there, and we had a pitching change for the Pirates. It's going to be Jake Woodford going now instead of Marco Gonzalez, so just took care of all that. It's all newly updated up on the website, so check it out, rotoscouts.com if you're new here. And, yeah, let's just kind of dive on in. Hopefully everybody's having a good start to their week. Cujo's here. Cujo was here early. I popped up the show window here earlier and saw Cujo jumped in at 3:01 saying hi to everybody. Hopefully he's still hanging around. Always good to see Cujo first one in the door, and I hope your Monday's going well too, buddy. Tizzlemane's here. Didn't have on how Jarren Duran would miss his first game of the season, yeah. Colin Sutherland says, yo. Guess it's Duran's ant moment. The kind of stands was annoying me the whole game. Dimitri says, what's up, gang? So it's good to see everybody here. It's an interesting little slate we got going here. It seems like a pretty good pitching board. A lot of decent options. A couple very targetable options as well. A couple interesting games, so kind of into it. Used to be the guy that was at Devil Ray games that was the worst. You may remember me, Yankee fan. Not sure who you're talking about, Tiz. There were a bunch of old, like, regular Yankee fans that, like, they're in some ways they're like treasures, like especially some of the people who were like in their 80s, you know, back in 1997 when I'm talking about in the old stadium and everything, that like now that they're gone, it's like, oh, those guys were treasures. That's great. They were at every frigging game. But in the moment it could get really annoying. There's this old dude who would bang on a frying pan with like a big metal spoon, and it was cool. And it would get the crowd going a lot of the time, and like it would, but like there would be times where you just want to strangle this like 85-year-old man. So yeah, some fans can be irritating. I was actually at the game on Saturday. You know, going back over the years, I would, if somebody's giving me shit in the seats or whatever, I'll turn around and say something to them or whatever. But maybe I'm older and wiser now or whatever. This dude came up behind me. There's usually season ticket holders behind me, and I know them a little bit from sitting in the same seats for several years now, so I talked to them and everything. And they got comped into the Jim Beam box, so they had bailed on their seats. And we sit upstairs, but it's like behind home plate, good seats. So a lot of the time, like I'll get to the game a couple innings late because I'm doing this shit, and I show up in the middle of the third inning, and I'll walk up the steps, and I'll see them cracking up in their seats behind mine because there's two people sitting in my seats, and they enjoy watching me throw them out. This time it was a reverse. I was in my seats. They left for the Jim Beam suite, and these kids come. They sit in the seats, and I'm just like, hey, just so you know, these people might come back. No big deal. And they were cool. They were or not cool, but they were fine. They were just younger kids in their mid-20s probably. And I hear them talking about like, hey, tell them, come meet us up here. There's a bunch of seats, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, oh, shit. So a bunch of their friends show up, and this one dude is just screaming and yelling drunk. And the entire section is just like giving him one of these. So at some point, like they're sitting back there, and I turn around and I say the same thing to him and his girlfriend. I'm like, hey, just so you guys know, no big deal. People who have these seats might be coming back. They just went to the Jim Beam suite, and he's, oh, fuck them, giving me a bunch of shit. And I'm just like, dude, I don't think they're going to go for fuck them if they come back. So, like, just letting you know, just trying to be a nice guy. And it turned out that one of the people from the seats had been walking up to the seats right then. So he's like, yeah, actually, I am one of those people, and I really don't appreciate that, blah, 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 blah. So the guy starts, giving me a bunch of shit and drunk idiot nonsense, staring at me, wanting to fight me, blah, blah, blah. So I was just like, dude, I am just not in the mood, or maybe I'm too old for this or whatever, but like, I just don't need this right now. Like, I'll just get you tossed out of this section, and like, you'll go back to your seats because I know you don't have tickets for these seats. Why don't you just calm down? And he's like, yeah, go get security. So after like 10 times of saying like, you just chill. Right? No, you say you go get security. See, let me see you do it. So I went and got security. Threw him out of the section. I was just like, again, in years past, I probably would have ended up getting into a fight with the guy. But yeah, idiot fans, always fun, especially Yankee Stadium. I mean, there's just so many tourist fans at Yankee games. Pop foul behind the first baseline, and people are jumping out of their seats like it's a home run. It's like anything that's hit in the air. Tisman's had a few experiences like that at Dolphins games, the heat and the booze. I could see that. I could see that for sure. I could definitely see that too at like FSU games. Like, yeah, anything Florida, anything down there. Alabama, I'm sure, is the same way with those college games. Those must get bananas with the heat. Although, I guess it's not necessary. Well, yeah, it's August, September. Yeah, that must get a little silly down that way. Am I 6'10"? No, I think you're thinking of Gundacker, Ricky. I'm not even 5'10". I'm like 5'8" and change, 5'9"-ish. Yeah, I'm not a large fella. I'll scrap if I have to, but I'm not big. Unfortunately. Although it probably would have gotten me in trouble if I was Gundacker's size in my life. Anyway, why don't we dive on into this baseball slate? Lone Wolf has season tickets for the Steelers. Nice. That shit doesn't happen at Steelers game. Yeah, because most of the time everybody's freezing and miserable. And Steelers and the Giants go way back together. The families. The Maras and the, the hell's the Steelers family's name again? Remind me. But yeah, they're like old NFL pals. So let's dive into this thing here. Rangers at the Red Sox. We have, per Mr. Roth, a little bit of rain in this one. He's got it as yellow, but he's just saying like late start, and we're probably going to be fine. 9.5 run total on the board, highest on the slate. Two pretty appealing offenses. 4.57 implied total on the visiting Texas side. We all know that Fenway's been playing incredible for offense this year. It's Brian Bale going for the Red Sox, pushing a fair total toward the Rangers, so they're pretty stackable here. And then Tyler Mahle making his second start back of the season. I expect pretty much full depth. Mahle went 5, faced 21 hitters in his first start back, struck out just 2, walked 1, so pretty efficient outing. But a talented pitcher that I expect full innings from. It's just, pretty good Red Sox team. They are, as mentioned, without Jarren Duran. I actually didn't take a second to see if that impacted the total. I doubt it. The one that didn't impact the total at all was changing that pitcher out for the Pirates. Padres still look really good against Woodford. This did come down a half a run. All right, so I'll get that updated when we go in, but let me do it now. Where'd it go? All right, so that's still essentially the same. It's just down a half a run from earlier. That might not even have been Duran. That might have just been happenstance. But call it 4.35 and 4.75. Two still pretty appealing offenses there. A lot of upside in the Red Sox. If people go away from them because Jarren Duran's not there, so be it. It's an interesting version of the lineup that they rolled out. They have Hamilton up in the leadoff spot, which kind of makes sense with no Duran. Yoshida in the 2 spot, but then it's Refsnyder hitting third, and he's facing a righty, which I don't necessarily love. I probably would have just stuck with Willie Abreu in that spot, but they moved him down to 6. So now you get Willie Abreu and Dom Smith, 2 lefties hitting back-to-back later on. We'll talk about the lineup when we get there. But an appealing Red Sox team, and again, Fenway Park boosting a lot of offense this season. I bet you that goes back up to 9.5. I'm going to leave it there. We'll leave it there for now. Puts the Red Sox over 5. I bet you it bounces back before that starts. The Royals at the Twins, 8.5 run total there, 4.79 on the Twins side. Looks like a pretty good spot. They're facing Brady Singer. The Royals against Pablo Lopez. We all know that every now and again Pablo can get nailed, but really hasn't been damaged too badly in most of his outings. Even the bad ones have just been a couple of runs outside of a A pair of 6-run games and a pair of 7-run games through the season, and actually a pair of 5-run games now that I'm looking. So that's starting to add up, actually. There's a number of gettable games here. He's made 23 starts. That was like, what 7 of them? 6 of them? So, again, gettable, but the Royals check down to 3.81 runs because he is actually good. Dodgers against the Brewers, dead even on the board in Vegas. Their 8-run total, 4.04. It's Freddie Peralta going against Clayton Kershaw. Pretty good pitching matchup. Think you can extract pitchers from both sides. Maybe you can grab some bats, though. I mean, both teams at not terrible totals, not sub 4, and obviously some capable offenses going there. So potentially some upside in that one too. A little bit of a four corners game just given the quality of those two lineups, especially up at the top, obviously. But I think we lean pitching in that one. It is a deep pitching slate though, so it does bring up the argument of do you just necessarily want to go away from targeting those teams' lineups even with good pitchers. Yankees highest total on the board, a near Coors Field kind of a total at 5.90 runs. Out in Chicago going up against Kai Busch. Yanks are drawing monster power totals. They're drawing monster ownership. You can see the gigantic favorites that they are in this game. It's Luis Gil going for the Yanks, so been pitching fairly well overall this season. Had a couple of rough spots. Still seems like he's outperforming his talent, but he's getting away with it, and he's getting away with it over and over and over again. So against the worst team in baseball, got to expect the upside. 3.24 implied total for the White Sox. Seems like a pretty appealing spot to grab some Luis Gil, and I don't think the White Sox are really on the board. Blue Jays at the Angels, another solid 9-run total in that one. The Blue Jays drawing a 4.52 on the road, and the hometown Angels, 4.57. Not a bad total for them either. It's Bowden Francis on the mound for the Blue Jays, and it's Davis Daniel going for the Angels. Two pretty gettable pitchers. Daniel has had a couple of okay starts, but the Blue Jays not really a great target for that. Bowden Francis just not really a good pitcher. The Angels are a targetable lineup, but I feel like we're drawing a little bit of their upside. So maybe they're one of the value teams, but I think with that total, they'll probably be on the board for everybody. We'll check the ownership on them when we get there. The Rockies at the Diamondbacks, really like the looks of Brandon Pfaadt on the Diamondbacks side of that one. 3.14 implied total for Colorado on the road against a righty. As usual, definitely a target spot for the pitcher. Rockies, they tend to be a team I talk about a little bit as a value angle, but this doesn't look like the spot overall. Pfaadt might get popular just by where he sits price-wise on the DraftKings slate compared to some of the other top-end pitchers. But when we get there in a sec, you'll see it's a very straight line through the price board today in terms of where everybody's projected. The sites kind of seem to have gotten it right. He's the one semi-outlier up toward the top, so I think that draws the popularity. You can see the Diamondbacks, a monster 5.49 implied total for them. They're going up against something called Bradley Blaylock. He had not pitched above Double-A coming into this season despite being 23. 75 innings in Double-A this year. He had a 20.2% strikeout rate. Doesn't really seem like an appealing pitcher. We'll give him a look when we get there because I think he's 4,000, but doesn't seem like the spot. Diamondbacks bats definitely seem in play. Pirates and the Pods, I mentioned this line didn't really move. The Padres went from Marco Gonzalez, a pretty bad lefty, to Jake Woodford, a pretty bad righty. And the line stayed basically exactly the same. Pods drawing a 5.02 implied total. On their side, definitely look appealing. Make Kyle Higashioka, hopefully he's in the lineup. I made him the home run pick of the day. Love Higgy at the bottom of the lineup. We've been talking about him all year. And when he's in the lineup, you just go to him for a cheap catcher power bat. And he's come through in that regard for us a bunch of times. Pod's lineup has been mixed results throughout the season, but I definitely think there's some quality there against Woodford. And then the Pirates coming back the other way, facing Joe Musgrove, who is making his first outing since May 26th. I actually forgot to grab Musgrove's rehab info when I put this together. Game log. Let me do that while we're talking here. He's made one rehab start. Jeez. What did I give him? That might be too much. See what I mean about it being like straight line through the pitching board, though? Or through the price board? I know we didn't finish the run board. I'm just I tripped up on Musgrove. I didn't realize he hadn't made more than just one rehab start. Kind of concerning. I might pull that projection back a little bit. It's a good spot against the Pirates. I believe Musgrove could succeed over 5. I just forget whether I trimmed it to 5 and it was still coming up that way. But we'll give it a look. And then the last game, the Braves at the Giants, dynamite pitching matchup. Just a 6.5 run total in that one. It's Blake Snell. It's Chris Sale. Couple of premium lefties. If you can afford them from the top of the board at the end of the night, it seems like a dynamite spot, and I really don't think we're going to bats there. Not exactly patient Braves lineup with a bunch of strikeouts in it going up against a high-end pitcher like Snell, and then pretty much the exact same thing. So despite the power and despite the propensity to hit for some power against lefties, both of these lineups pretty low end, 3.24 and a 3.34 implied total in San Francisco. Not exactly a hitter-friendly park, not exactly hitting friendly conditions most of the time out there, and that run total is just absurdly low. So I don't think we're targeting the lefties. Both of those guys fall on the very, very high end of the strong side of that there are lefties and there are lefties thing. Speaking of, there they are. Top of the board next to each other. Chris Snell. I got tripped up between Chris Sale and Blake Snell. Chris Snell. Just combine them, roll them together. Chris Sale at the top of the board, 11-2, 10-5 across sites. Worth paying for. I mean, premium upside. It's one of the higher pitching projections we've had all season. If I had just let the model fly, I felt like the model was giving him a little bit too much depth. It wanted him up over 50. I don't love going over 50 for a median projection. I don't think that's necessarily correct to do with any pitcher. Maybe like Spencer Strider on a good day. But there's not many guys that I want at that level. Chris Sale, I was considering leaving it there. I just felt like the innings was a little bit off. So I trimmed it a little bit, and I put him, I modeled it a little bit. I like where he's at the top of the board. I think that's a realistic projection with some ceiling left on it for the money. So definitely premium spot for I almost did it again, for Sale. I can't have those two guys next to each other. In the next spot, Blake Snell, for a little bit cheaper, is a significantly high option just as much. There shouldn't be all that much daylight between the ceilings for these two pitchers, despite Snell being at a lower median. Part of that is his history of not pitching quite as deep into ball games as Sale does, and just his inefficiency that crops up sometimes. Sale is a much more efficient pitcher, and we'll look at the numbers when we get there. But the ceilings, again, there's not as much daylight between those ceilings as there is between those median projections. So either way, and the Atlanta lineup factors into that a little bit as well. Either way, excellent left-handed options off the top. Luis Gil has had a very strong season with some premium spots for strikeout upside, facing the worst lineup in baseball. 10-8 on FanDuel is pricey. 9,000 on DraftKings, less so. Fits right into the board there. Brendan Pfaadt, like I said, a little minor outlier price-wise in terms of like straight lining through the 10s and the 9s up at the top of the board. 8-6 against Colorado in Arizona is a very, very good price. He's a good pitcher. I'm happy to get there on DraftKings at 92 on FanDuel. I would be surprised if he wasn't my pitcher of choice. I prefer it to Freddie Peralta, even though it'll probably be more popular. I think I prefer it to Freddie for 9,000. I prefer the discount from Pablo. Take the $500. Kershaw against the Brewers is interesting at 8. That's very, very cheap for Clay Kershaw. Again, I think this one might be a little high. That might be like ceiling-ish projection for Musgrove. Singer against the Twins is rough. So, yeah, this one might be an if I can get there kind of a spot. It'll be that or probably that between those two guys for my FanDuel lineup today. Peralta is playable against the Dodgers. It's the Dodgers. It feels, again, like more of a why would you kind of a spot. Clay Kershaw against the Brewers, a little bit more upside, maybe. They're very similarly projected. If you rolled this 100 times, it would probably come down very close, 55-45, between the two as far as which was the most successful. They're two premium pitchers. You just get Freddie has a terrible matchup and has hit some bumps in the road. Kershaw, a little bit limited in, what is this, his fourth or fifth start back? Where is he? Scroll too far. This game's not that far down the list. 4 start back. Hasn't hit the 5-inning mark yet. 4 2/3 in the last one against the Phils. 5 strikeouts, faced 19 hitters. He's faced over 20 hitters in each of the first 2 games. Part of that was just due to allowing some hits and some runs. But I feel like he's got the 6-inning depth that we need, given how many hitters he's faced. He just hasn't been totally sharp. So for $8,000, 77 on DraftKings, I feel like Clay Kershaw is easily on the value board. Singer against the Twins, he's been pitching fairly well throughout the season. 88-84 is not a bad price from the middle of the board. I just feel like that's exactly where he belongs. And we know there's downside, and the Twins are pretty good. Tyler Mahle against Boston, definitely in that hitting environment. A little bit of concerns. It's Mahle's second start back, but he did go 5 in the first one. Faced 21 hitters, gave up 5 hits, 2 strikeouts and a walk. He is a talented pitcher, but a still threatening Red Sox lineup, even with Jarren Duran out. Seems like a spot for offense given the totals and everything that we're seeing there. Bowden Francis is a pretty hard no against the Angels. He's very cheap, so I guess we'll give him some consideration at 58 on DraftKings, 75 on FanDuel. I just don't think we need to go there. Bryant Bayo against Texas, pretty low end for a mediocre price from further down the board there. Woodford's a no against the Pods. Daniel is pretty much a no against the Blue Jays. We'll consider him just on a little bit of cheap upside maybe, but the Blue Jays pretty low. Strikeout overall. Blaylock's a hard no against Arizona, and Kai Busch is a very firm no against the Yankees. So while it's a long slate here in terms of, it gets down to, depending on what you want to do with these guys, I think all these guys are at least somewhat viable and correctly priced and correctly ranged. It does cut off fairly high. Like, a lot of that is pretty uncomfortably unplayable. Bayo's probably playable, but he's not exactly discounted compared to a couple of the better options up here. Mahle's playable for cheap, but really, really threatened by that spot, that ballpark, etc., etc. Musgrove, I think we're looking at a short outing. Do they have a number on it? Let me see. Oh, what a helpful headline. San Diego Union Tribune. Padres expect same Joe Musgrove in return, but just a little different. What the hell that means. 77 days out with an elbow. 60 pitches. All right. I'm going to cut that. That Musgrove projection is going to come down. So we'll get to that after the show. But again, so I would throw Musgrove into that bucket for sure. So it's really Singer and up, strong to playable. And then everybody down at least comes with some concerns, some warts, either through matchup or through just general lack of talent. See what's going on in the chat before we start the game by game here. Yeah, Trey, the Angels were definitely pushed up a little bit in the power index. I think Adele was drawing a nice number. Logan O'Hoppe, I believe, is above the magic number. Zach Neto, I think, was a pretty strong one. I made Zach Neto the home run pick from that team, not for the day. Again, I used Higgy for the home run pick of the day. I almost made it Giancarlo Stanton. I love the Yankees power upside. If somebody put a gun to my head and said, which of these teams is hitting a home run today, I would have said the Yankees. Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, or Giancarlo Stanton, most specifically. But all three of those guys are going to be owned in like the 20% on FanDuel and probably higher on DK. So they're just going to be super popular, but it's a killer spot. But there are other interesting power spots, and yeah, that's one of them. That 4.5 run total also, makes the Angels at least somewhat realistic. And Bowden Francis is a nothing opponent, so I definitely think there's some appeal there. Anyway, bunch of people here hanging out, watching. Appreciate it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Check out our pals over at acemind.io for all your sim and optimization needs, especially as we come into football season. I'm telling you, that thing is going to be killer. Just between like the ability to build volume lineups. If you're a person who, like me, you get back from work on Friday night, or if you're me, you get back from sitting right here on Friday night and finish this, and then it's like, all right, let's start building lineups for Sunday. And you've done your research through the week. You've watched your shows. Hopefully you'll be here watching shows through the week. That's my plan so far. Again, I threatened to do this all through last year, and we never actually got there, but I want to do like a quarterback show, a receiver show, a running back show, and so on through the week, and then one summary show that's not a crazy 4-hour marathon. But we'll see if we get there. Point being, if you're like me, though, and you just need tools to I want to build thousands of lineups starting on Friday and just get through all the edges and all the corners and the nuts and bolts of the slate. You need something that's going to be capable of just churning those lineups out for you and then having the ability to sim out full fields of these gigantic slates, these 300,000 entry slates that you're going to be entering if you're chasing millies and stuff. So you really want, I definitely long snapper show Stephen Lipowitz. Yeah, that'll be Fridays. First thing Sunday morning, 10 a.m. So acemind.io gives you those kinds of tools. They've got powerful optimizers, and you can also use the sim tools that way. You can just have it generate a pool of, just run me a random sim. I'm not going to input any lineups, or even if you do input lineups, it will generate a pool of 300,000 some odd lineups, or whatever the contest size is. And a bunch of them will be duped, and it'll tell you how many you're going to be duped. And a bunch of them, if you're just straight using the sim tools, it just kind of mashes things together. So a bunch of them will be, lower end. But you get thousands of premium high-end lineups that are exemplars of what kind of combinations you can get to, and then what kind of combinations, once you run the sim, obviously, are successful through those sims. So it's just really, really powerful tools. If you use promo code rotoscouts over at acemind.io, all in caps, 20% off your first month over there. Strongly encourage you to check them out. By the way, they've got great stuff for baseball. Basketball's not too far off. They've got stuff for a bunch of other ancillary sports. Really looking strong. And with that, the Red Sox, the Rangers, Fenway Park, a lot of upside for offense in this one. Molly, again, a talented pitcher for 6,800, 7,200. Different situation. I'd definitely be intrigued. 5 relatively successful innings in his debut for the season. He struck out just 2, walked 1, gave up just 1 earned run on 5 hits, faced 21 hitters. Not a bad outing. We didn't have him barely at all last year. 25 2/3, 5 starts. 2 years ago, 120 innings, 23 starts, a 4.40 ERA, a 4.03 xFIP, but a 25% strikeout rate, an 11% swinging strike rate. Fairly effective at limiting premium contact despite being a fly ball pitcher. Had better run year before that. Year before that was 180 innings and 33 starts. That's the year in the Dynasty League that I signed him off of, and then he kind of fell apart, and then I traded him away this year. Finally got that contract off the books. EMAC was the one that took that contract on for me to get it off my books. He got a lot. He got, Colt Keith and some other stuff for it. Lucky guy. So anyway, in 21, he had a 3.75 ERA with a matching 3.74 xFIP, 27.7% strikeout rate, very strong 11.4 swinging strike rate, and a 29.3% CSW. So there's some reality to the idea that he is a good pitcher. It's just, do we get a big upside start? Because if he starts racking up strikeouts, we're probably going to lose depth. I think 5 innings, I think there is depth to 6, but that's if he pitches efficiently and is probably around like 4 or 5 strikeouts. So there's some give and take there until the arm is fully built up at the major league level. But he is cheap. It's just a pretty big total in this game. The Red Sox being over 5 runs doesn't look all that appealing. Same thing for Brian Bayo. He's effectively priced in the mid-range, 7,900, 8,500. The Rangers have been very up and down through the season, but it's a more complete version of the Rangers lineup than we've seen a lot of times this year. So I think with them basically back to relatively full strength, let's say, or is it basically full strength? I I think there's just more upside for offense in this one. So if you're inclined to roll the dice for Bayo, if you need a few shares at price at 7,900 as an SP2 on DraftKings, it's playable. 111 and 2/3. He's got a 22.2% strikeout rate. He's got a 3.74 xFIP, but a 5.16 ERA. That's obviously ugly, but the true number is the xFIP. That's around his talent level. 8.3% walks is a little bit high. He does give up a fair amount of hard hits, but he's good at keeping the ball down. 6.3 degree average launch. So what it could potentially do is check the Rangers' upside as a stack in terms of they might not go out there and hit 4 home runs today. It might be a day where they land between the 4 and 6 runs that they're, kind of implied for here, but don't have that crazy upside DFS day, just if Bayo's successful at keeping the ball on the ground. You can still generate runs, you can still sequence when that happens, and you can see the 5.16 ERA is indicative of that. 102 mark by Stuff Plus. He's got a medium home run rate despite keeping the ball down. This is actually pretty high for keeping the ball down that much. That means when he does make a mistake, they get pretty hard and they get walloped for home runs more often than not. So you've got some moderately effective home run marks here for the Rangers, but in this hitting environment, these would be higher against a lot of other pitchers. So again, a little bit for Cornizzi. Given where they've got the pitchers priced, I think they've got minor playability, but it's not great. I'd rather have bats on either side. Marcus Semien back in the leadoff spot for the Rangers, still pretty cheap at 4,700 on DraftKings, 3,300 on FanDuel. He's got 17 home runs on the year, a 160 ISO, back to 100 WRC plus, dead even at league average for run creation. But he's super low strikeout. He draws a bunch of walks, so he's either getting on base through drawing the free pass or putting the ball in play. Just had some bad luck through the season, I think. We're not far off the marks, as we've looked at a bunch of times in terms of how he hits the ball. He's never been one to make incredibly frequent killer contact, despite his home run upside. Even 26 home runs 2 years ago, 29 home runs last year, despite just 6.5% barrels, 36.8% hard hits, same thing the year before. He just puts the ball in play really, really frequently, and he's able to find home run upside despite that. He hasn't found a lot of other extra base hits. You can see the ISO's plummeted from 201 last year, which was outstanding, 181 the year before. We're all the way down to 160 this year. But that's why he's cheap. I feel like all of that is baked into these prices at this point. Remember, this is a guy who earlier in the season was in the high 5s on DraftKings, if not 6, upper 3s on FanDuel. So the price is way down. 54.35 for Seager, you could say the same thing. He's slashing 274, 353, 499, having way better of a season than Marcus Semien is. Getting on base at a 353 clip, 224 ISO, creating runs 32% better than average. Corey Seager's still putting up basically star caliber numbers. 16.1% barrels, 51.2% hard hits. Lefty bat, you're going to throw him against Brian Bayo in a hitting environment in Fenway Park tonight? That works for me. Josh Smith for 38, 3,000 is cheap. Maintaining a pretty good season. 12 home runs on the year now, a 158 ISO. The ISO's not great, but the 12 home runs over 432 plate appearances is a little bit more power than we've seen from him. And he's good at putting bat on ball. He's good at finding his way to first. The on base has come down somewhat. It is lining up with the X stats. I was saying that I was hoping he would continue to defy them. It's still normalizing. 273, 363, 430 is still good, but that's down from over 300. Just 2 weeks ago, we were in the 380s for the on base. The WRC Plus is coming down. It's at 124, but it is still an effective enough bat for the price. As I've said all season long with Josh Smith, as long as the price doesn't go up, it doesn't really make a difference. If he just normalizes back to who he really is, it's fine for the money, especially on DraftKings at 38. FanDuel, maybe now we would want him in the high 2s, a Nathaniel Lowe kind of a price. But totally playable at 3,000. Adolis Garcia is cheap, 4,100, 3,100. 18 home runs, 10 stolen bases, an 85 WRC plus with a 172 ISO. He is up to 220, 284, 391. That average is coming up a little bit. He had a pretty successful weekend in Yankee Stadium for hits. For hits. I don't know why my voice cracked there. Let's see. The series against the Yanks over the weekend. He went 7 for 13, but it was 1 double and 6 singles. 3 runs scored, 2 ribbies, a stolen base. Struck out just 15.4% and drew 15.4% walks in that tiny series. So he was getting on base pretty regularly against the Yankees and pushing the numbers up and doing interesting things. We've basically been, trying to sell out for power for most of the year with mixed results. So if he's going to try and focus a little bit more and zero in on actually hitting, that's nothing but upside now that he's this cheap. That is absurdly low priced for, even with his struggles this year, a guy who's still making a contact at fairly elite levels, 11.5% barrels, 47.4% hard hits. And he's got 18 homers, 10 steals. It's just, a diminished version of Garcia. But he's priced down over here further than his diminishment actually has been. Nathaniel Lowe, 3,400, 2,900 is too cheap. 263, 360, 395 with a 115 WRC plus. He's an effective bat. He's striking out a little bit. Right around where he's supposed to be. 22.1 versus 22.8 last year. Draws a lot of walks. Hits the ball effectively. Last year he was hitting it a little bit harder. But he's an effective bat for the cheap pricing if you're going to this team. Josh Young, also effectively priced, 4,200, 3,200. Over 63 plate appearances. He's got 3 home runs. We're at 283, 317, 517. Perfectly fine there. A 233 ISO is great. 129 WRC plus. This is all tiny sample. But remember, just last year, this guy hit 23 home runs. Had a 201 ISO. A 110 WRC plus over 515 opportunities. He's just been hurt. It's not like he's been bad. So I don't exactly know why he's that cheap on DraftKings, but take advantage. 3,200 on FanDuel is probably $200-300 cheap. Wyatt Langford for 4,000, 2,900, right around where he should be, I think. 6 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 243, 313, 368. Not exactly giving us a star caliber rookie season. He's not completely terrible for a young player, in his first year, but it's not dynamite. It's not setting the world on fire for DFS, but he's not expensive if you need a differentiator, if you need another outfielder from this team. Perfectly acceptable option with high ceiling. In any given slate, there's definitely ceiling because there's definitely talent there. Jonah Heim, mix and match catcher, 3,000, 2,700. He's got 10 home runs on the season, but limited everything else. Leody Taveras, a cheap option in the outfield, 9 home runs, 12 steals, but a 78 WRC plus. Mix and match caliber player. On the Sox side, couple of lefties at the top of the lineup. Not the lefty you usually see up there, but David Hamilton for 45-28. Pretty cheap at second base or shortstop on either site. Over 270 plate appearances. He's stolen 29 bases, got on base at a 307 clip. Could be a little bit better in that department. That would push everything, the stolen bases, most particularly the WRC plus. If he was regularly at the top of the lineup ahead of these RBI machines, or the RBI machines that are usually there, you might see a little bit of upside in run creation ability as well. It's a good spot for a player like that. If he gets on, he's going to be running. I'm just going to go old school with the leadoff spot today. Very cheap on FanDuel at 28. Yoshida for 4,000, 2,900 is too cheap. Over 272 opportunities, he's slashing 280, 349, 412, a 111 WRC plus. He's hit 7 home runs. Solid lefty bat going up against Tyler Mahle. Again, a good, but just working his way back righty. 13.6% strikeouts for Masataka Yoshida, 7% walks. High-end bat. Hit the ball a little bit harder last year, but 5.3% barrels, 38.5% hard hits, average-ish. Robbie Refsnyder is hitting the ball hard overall this year. I'll give him that much. Over 237 plate appearances. He's got a very strong slash line. 298, 386, 483, 185 ISO, a 139 WRC plus. Against same-handed pitching this year, he's at 288, 360, 414. But the ISO dips from 255 against lefties, which is absurd, to 126 against righties. Does still have a 114 WRC plus in the split, though. Just one of his 7 home runs has come against same-handed pitching. So you lose a lot of power upside, but Reffy's still holding down like a decent average, decent on base, more of a correlated scoring option in this on this side of the platoon. But he's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with including Rob Refsnyder. I just hate that he's an outfielder. He was better when he had, I think it was second base eligibility, and this is going back probably 2 years at this point. But it's just, for 3,800, 2,800, I feel like I can do better in that outfield spot a lot of the time. If he was facing a lefty, there'd be a little bit more upside. Rafi Devers, 6,000, 3,700. Happy to have him anytime. 25 home runs at 292 ISO, 157 WRC+. This team's still without Tyler O'Neill, by the way. He's on the IL with that weird calf infection that apparently is getting worse. Knowing O'Neill, they're going to have to amputate his friggin' leg at this point. Hopefully not. Best wishes for a speedy recovery, Mr. O'Neill. But guy that's just been completely marred by injuries throughout his career. It's just, and frustrating, stupid shit. Connor Wong for 37, still too cheap on DraftKings where you have to play catchers. Also has first base eligibility now over there, which is interesting because you could just totally skip Dom Smith if you want to. That said, Smith, a lefty bat against the righty. But it's appealing for Connor Wong to have that eligibility. 2,900 a catcher on FanDuel. He's just playing like a first baseman. Slashing 293, 349, 430 for the season. Creating runs 15% better than average. Hitting fifth pretty regularly for this team. Just give me any random guy hitting fifth for the Red Sox at these prices. I think you would be at worst playable in this kind of a situation, given that it's a premium bat, or not premium, but a fairly high-end bat that hit the ball even harder last year than he has been this year and the year before that too. For these prices, that's really, really strong. With catcher eligibility, excellent option. Willie Abreu, 44.32, 12 home runs on the year, a 230 ISO, 125 WRC+, mashing when he makes contact, 12.5% barrels and 49% hard hits. Do not leave Willie Abreu out of your Red Sox axe just because he's hitting sixth instead of third. Definitely a strong option. Hopefully people do skip him. 12 homers, 7 steals. Excellent. Over 302 plate appearances. Strikes out at a fairly high clip, but he draws his walks, and again, just crushes the ball when he connects with it. Dom Smith, a lot less so, but he does have a 10.2% barrel, 39% hard hits, making respectable contact. Just 6 homers, 233, 313, 392, and a 94 WRC+. He's pretty skippable, especially with Wong carrying first base eligibility. Nick Sogard and Sedan Rafaela at the bottom of the lineup. Sogard mix and match caliber at second base or shortstop for 27. That's very cheap, and he does have second base on DraftKings, which works. At shortstop only, for even for 24 on FanDuel, that feels pretty skippable. Rafaela, more playable, despite being higher priced. 263, 295, 418, just a 91 WRC+. Again, I'll say it over and over. If you showed me these stats, I would say, wow, that guy's probably got a positive WRC+ outside of that on-base percentage not being that good. And he'd be better if he could get on base more frequently. But those are good numbers for counting stats for DFS point creation. 13 homers, 16 steals, 60 runs scored, 58 ribbies. I will take that outside of everything else. I'm just talking about the raw counting stats of it. It makes him playable. It really, really does. Because again, 4,200, 3,000 multi-position on both sites. There's really not that much downside if you're just wrapping him around to the top, especially on a day with no Jarren Duran. I think he's got at least some cheap appeal. If you want to talk about some of his deficiencies, 280 xWOBA, the 307 actual WOBA. He's got a 326 batting average on balls in play, supporting what are pretty mediocre numbers. Supporting the 263 average for sure, which is why batting average is garbage. 295 on base with the 326 BABIP should probably be higher. With all his speed, should probably be higher. Again, this is a guy who could be a much better player. But the overall point is that the production and counting stats, which is all, it really boils down to a lot of the time for DFS, has been effective enough for a guy who costs this much, with especially here, with that eligibility position-wise. Always playable. Not a great option. Don't go crazy. He's hitting ninth. He's hitting ninth for a reason. But he's provided some numbers. He's definitely helped people win slates this year. So, Red Sox bats, Rangers bats. Really neither pitcher, but I guess it's Molly just given where he's priced. A little bit better projection. I just don't know what the ceiling looks like for either one of these pitchers. I think it's a limited pitching spot. Both are on the board, but greatly prefer the bats. Royals lineup is in. Michael Massey back at the top. It's a good Royals team. We've talked about them a lot through the season, but just a 3.81 implied total for them. Pretty weak. Pushes the upside toward Pablo. 9,200, 9,700 across sites for him. He's got a 27.1% strikeout rate this year. An ugly 4.74 ERA, but his quality is really supported by the 3.32 xFIP if you don't want to just go by what's happened in years past where he's been very good. This is the highest ERA he's had by a full run in the last 3 years. But ERA, like batting average, doesn't exactly mean a lot. It includes a lot of things that have nothing to do with the pitcher or very little to do with the pitcher. That's why xFIP and similar stats are much better. If you prefer Sierra, oops, not Sears. If you prefer Sears, I have bad news for you. I think they're mostly out of business around the country. But if you prefer Sierra, the Sierra is 3.36, so not exactly far off the xFIP. Sierra, a slightly better predictor of long-term ERA. I just prefer xFIP. So Lopez not pitching poorly this season, despite what the ERA might tell you, despite a few leaks with home runs. 3.95% home run rate is a little bit high, but this is perfectly manageable. So is that. 8.7% barrels. A few mistakes have traveled out of the ballpark, maybe. Last time out, he gave up 4 earned runs in 5 innings to the Cubs at Wrigley. He gave up a home run in that game, 2 strikeouts. Was that intense win game where the Cubs ended up scoring a few runs? I forget. I think it was. Game before that, 6 innings against the Mets and Queens, 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts. That was the third of 3 straight 7 strikeout games. It was also the third of 3 straight quality starts. 7 innings against the Tigers the game before that, and then 7 innings against the Brewers. 1 run allowed on 4 hits to the Brew Crew, 2 runs on 6 hits to the Tigers. Pair of 5-inning starts against the Astros and the White Sox. The White Sox one was disappointing. 5 strikeouts, just 2 earned runs on 4 hits, but that's not a good start against the White Sox for a pitcher of his caliber. And then the Astros start was one of his bumpy ones. He gave up 6 earned runs in that one. And again, I mentioned it at the beginning of the show, but he has had some bad spots. 6 earned runs in that one against the Astros. Another 6-run game against the Rangers. He's not good against teams from Texas, apparently. That was back in May, the one against the Rangers. That was bookended by a 7-run start against the Yankees in the Bronx and a 7-run start against the Nationals in D.C., so maybe he doesn't like pitching on the East Coast either. Where was the 5-run game? And a 5-run game in Tampa Bay was his other mediocre start of the season. Oh, and a 5-run game in Detroit, too. That was way back in early April, though. I don't think we'll ding him too much for that one. Overall, it's a premium pitcher. Strikeout high this season of 14. He's hit 9 a couple of times, 8 a couple of times. He had a 10 strikeout game against Seattle. The 14 came against Oakland in 8 innings, 2-hitter. Capable of dominance, even against a team like the Royals. Issue is, the Royals are a very low strikeout. This confirmed version of the lineup, 17.5% strikeout rate. Only MJ Melendez in the middle of the lineup at 24.5%, the only hitter over 20% strikeouts. So, very challenging team to find strikeout upside against, but 7 clean innings is on the board any given slate for Pablo. 92-97 is not a misprice. Definitely playable. Singer on the other side, 22.2% strikeout rate, over 130 2/3 in 23 starts this season. We've definitely had the good version of Brady Singer. 3.03 ERA against a 3.61 xFIP has been pretty effective. You can see that Stuff Plus does not like his arsenal at all. 15 and change points below the league average by Stuff Plus, but he's been effective with it. He's been keeping the ball down to either on the ground or to a fairly low average launch angle at 8.6 degrees. 8.2% barrels is fine. 39.9% hard hits on that trajectory is totally fine. Exit velo is not bad. Just a 2.39% home run rate is totally believable. So, it's getting tougher and tougher to really argue against Singer. He gave up 4 earned runs over 5 2/3 against Boston his last time out. Struck out 6, issued just 1 walk. 10 hits is problematic. That was the first of his games. He was also coming off 3 straight starts of 7 innings, 3 straight quality starts. 2 of those appearances were against the White Sox and the Cubs, Actually, all 3 of those were against Chicago teams. 2 of those were against the White Sox. 1 of those was against the Cubs. In the first White Sox game and the Cubs game in the middle, he gave up no earned runs in each of those 7-inning appearances. Then he gave up 3 earned runs to the White Sox at the White Sox in 7 innings in the last start there. Had an ugly game, 2 2/3, also against the Red Sox. So he's pitched against the Red Sox, both Chicago teams, and the Red Sox in his last 5 games. He gave up 4 earned runs both times to the Red Sox. Just 2 2/3 in that start, going back a few. 7 very strong innings at Coors Field. He struck out 7, just 1 earned run, 6 hits. It's a good Twins team, but it is a version that has a 22.9% strikeout rate. Matt Wallner at 40.2% is pushing that up a little bit. We're up to 112 plate appearances now. He was at 31.5% last year. So, let's say I give him that. It makes it a 22% strikeout rate, so it's not really offsetting all that much by taking him out of there and just giving him that one. Normalize it a bit. So it's a team that is gettable enough for strikeouts, right around Singer's average, somewhere between 1-5 and 1-4. For 88, 84, I do think he's playable. I'll probably end up at least including him in consideration when I was saying, hey, I'll probably try to get to here. Default to there as a safety position, but if I could have Singer for 88 against Minnesota versus 8,000 for Clay against Milwaukee, it's close. It's debatable. Again, Musgrove's going to come down. On the Royal side, Mike Massey at the top, 4,000, 2,800 at second base, has 10 home runs in 219 plate appearances, and is only 4,000 at second base. Only 2,800 on FanDuel at second base. In an appealing lineup against a pitcher who's, scuffled for a little bit of power this season, against a pitcher who's had some meltdown games and given up some big upside for DFS purposes. Massey's not great at getting on base. Not a good leadoff option, 290 on base percentage, but a 216 ISO, a 105 WRC plus, and again, 10 home runs in 219 chances from a lefty bat that we know has good contact ability over the last couple of years, who also just strikes out at a 15.1% clip with a 3.2% walk rate. There's upside in considering Mike Massey. Again, the Royals are checked down to just a 3.8 total, but this is still a good lineup with a lot of bat-on-ball ability. So if Pablo goes out there and is the bad version of Pablo, this is a team that can absolutely take advantage of that. And Massey is cheap. Witt is expensive, but worth it. 347, 394, 604, 256 ISO, a 171 WRC plus, 22 homers, 25 stolen bases, 14.3% barrels, and 49.1% hard hits from the shortstop this year. Premium, excellent shortstop option. Is there a better shortstop on today's slate? I don't think so. Vinny Pasquantino, 4,900, 3,300. He cooled off a little bit after that absurd 10 days that he had. We're at 264, 317, 452. I'll take responsibility for that. We gotta forgive Vinny for that one. I traded him after acquiring him. After singing his praises for the last full calendar year, basically. Finally landed him on the team. He didn't start the first week. Was in the lineup last week, and I traded him midweek in that big Sonny Gray and Cole Ragans trade for some pitching upside down the stretch. Didn't actually need him this year and couldn't really bring him back next year, but I still love you, Vinny. Anyway, he was dejected and disappointed leaving the clubhouse and needed to give us the finger on the way out the door. So he came down a little bit, but the price is low, 4,900, 3,300 for a guy who absolutely crushes the ball when he makes contact and a guy who makes absurdly frequent contact for the quality of contact that he makes. I love Vinny Pasquantino, 188 ISO on the season, a 108 WRC plus. Throw all that lefty contact and power against a pitcher who has given up some odd contact and had some bad home run results this season. I like the upside for Vinny. Sal Perez for 52-31 has 21 home runs, a 195 ISO, a 121 WRC plus. Definitely get to some Sal, 9.66 for him in the home run model. Couple of 9s up at the top of the lineup. A 7.39 for Vinny that could maybe be a little bit higher. MJ creeping in there at 6.97. This is respectable. You can see top 6 jumps to 8.15 in the home run model. There is power upside for the Royals today. And again, if Pablo comes out and is the shaky version of Pablo on contact, it could be a big day for the Royals. They can string together hits. They're not great at drawing walks, but they can absolutely string together hits because they don't strike out. MJ does. MJ strikes out, but when he makes contact from the left side, he makes very good contact for a guy who costs 3,300, 2,800 across sites in the outfield. He's hit 13 home runs in 326 plate appearances. He's got a 197 ISO. It's premium power and contact. That's all you're buying from MJ, and he's very affordable for it. Hunter Renfroe, a little bit more than that. 233, 307, 397. Mostly here to hit home runs, but he gives you a little bit more. He doesn't strike out all that much at 17.7%. He draws some walks. Not making the killer contact that he used to. The home run total's off the mark a little bit, but a lot of that has come in a rush over the last month or so. He was really dead in the water for most of the season. So it's nice to see him back, and his price hasn't really gone up, so I think he's effectively playable. Adam Frazier, mix and match at 26-24 across positions. Michael Garcia, 43-29. More upside than Frazier. He's up to 238. 287, 345. Just a 73 WRC plus is disappointing. 6 home runs and 28 stolen bases on the season. Pretty disappointing, nearly 500 plate appearances at this point from Michael Garcia. I liked the upside coming in. Still does hit the ball pretty hard. Doesn't really strike out. Just kind of scuffling to find any kind of consistency. But a playable piece because he's not expensive. He's more expensive than these guys, but he's got a much bigger ceiling than those guys. Kyle Isbell, mix and match 24-26. On the Twins side, see if the lineup came in the last little bit. Doesn't look like it did. Maybe on underdog. Yankees on. Yeah, there it is. Let's see. I can get it quick. And I actually need to put the confirmed in. Scattered today. Felt like this all day. Just like one of those like lingering feelings that like something was left undone. And like just a little scatterbrained. Screwed like 3 things up while I was putting the pitching projections together. Not that went up to the site, but. All right. Castro, Larnach, Lewis, Wallner, Buxton, Kepler, Carlos Santana here. Jeffers there. That's the only change. So, Willie Castro, good source of run scoring. 67 runs on the season. He crosses home plate a fairly frequent amount. 8 home runs, 12 stolen bases. Mediocre season for counting stats. But he's involved quite a bit for this team. He's their regular leadoff hitter. Second base and shortstop for 4,700. 4 position eligible for 3,100 is dynamite on the FanDuel slate. 343 on base, a 114 WRC plus. All you're really looking for from Castro is some correlated scoring upside, and he's definitely got that. He's provided it all year long, and he was good last season. He was better for counting stats in DFS upside last season. But getting the bonus plate appearances, hitting leadoff basically every day now, hitting ahead of some key bats like Larnach, Lewis, and Wallner, as well as Byron Buxton and Max Kepler, let's not forget. This is a deep Twins lineup. He's good at the top of it, and he provides a lot of upside to correlate with those other guys. Trevor Larnach at 3,500, 2,600 did strike out at a 34% clip last year, but this year he's at just 20%. 9.5% walks. The walks are down a little bit from 12.7 last year. Makes still good premium contact, but not quite as good as it was the last 2 seasons. 9.9% barrels versus 13.3 last year. 43.8% hard hits versus 49.6% last year. But still has good results. And again, this in a vacuum, if you're not looking at his last year numbers, you'd say that's pretty good for a guy who costs $35.26. That is very, very good contact. It's resulted in 11 home runs in 275 chances. Not a bad total. Not a great total, but not a bad total. 176 ISO. Not bad. We could use some extra base hits in there. Or extra base hits. 110 WRC plus, though. He's been very effective, and he's cheap, hitting second in the lineup. Just another outfielder in a lot of ways. But some upside from the left side against Brady Singer. Royce Lewis, 49, 4,000. Correctly priced on FanDuel at $4,000 on third base. 12.11, undeniable in the home run model right now, despite Singer being pretty good at keeping the ball down and in the yard. Lewis has just been a different animal this season. 14 home runs in 156 plate appearances, a 375 ISO, 15.4% barrels and 43.3% hard hits. Doesn't really strike out at a terrible clip around the average, 21.8%, 11.5% walks. Just needs to be in the lineup. Whenever he is, you can fire away with that. DraftKings is where he's an excellent asset. 4,900. Just mispriced. I do not know how they arrived at that price. Take advantage. Matt Wallner at 4,100 is extremely cheap. 112 plate appearances. He's got 7 home runs with a 348 ISO. Pair of guys in extremely small samples, obviously, but a pair of guys who've just been crushing the ball. Killer output. And they're both hitting for decent averages in the small sample. Most importantly, they're both getting on base at great clips to support their run creation upside. I expect the power and everything will gradually come down over more plate appearances. But if they sustain the ability to get on base, especially Wallner with this absurd 40% strikeout rate, presumably it normalizes to about that. There's a lot of upside between those two hitters, though. And putting them together on DraftKings, that gives you Royce Lewis for $4,500 basically. Because Wallner is easily a $4,500 player, so that's not a misprice averaging him up and averaging Royce Lewis down to $4,500 now. Forget it. That's a killer spot. Byron Buxton at 48. I mean, just take the top 5 Twins. That's $4,400 apiece for a lineup that includes Castro, Larnach, Lewis, Wallner, and Buxton. If you don't like Byron Buxton, take the lefty and go to Max Kepler for cheaper. Right? Top 4 plus max on DraftKings today is $4,180 apiece. $20,900 for the full stack. You get all 3 of your outfielders, a premium third baseman, and you put Willie Castro at second base because, hell, you could game stack this or just grab Bobby Witt as a one-out shortstop if you wanted, but, like, put them together with, who's another team with a premium shortstop on this slate? Texas? Corey Seager? You're blocked off from Marcus Semien in that slate, but Texas has a lot of usable pieces. It's a really interesting Twins lineup. If you don't like that, if you don't want to occupy 3 outfield spots, top 4 and Carlos Santana, who is having a very effective season this year and only cost $3,400. Now we're down to $4,120 on the average. And we still have Larnach, Lewis, and Wallner in the lineup at the top. Let's say I want to grab a little bit more mid-lineup, a little bit more correlation while still getting Carlos Santana there. And I'm fine with grabbing a cheaper or different infielder for a very similar price as Willie Castro. I can add Byron Buxton back into that stack. And I'm still at just $4,140. The Twins are cheap. For a team with their top 8 hitters creating runs 31% better than average on the average for the entire season. Yes, with a couple small and medium-sized samples in there. But a lot of these guys are more complete seasons. And again, 31% better than average on the average. Let's take out Lewis and Wallner and their 100 and change plate appearances. The remaining guys in that top 8 are at 116. So maybe that's the realistic number. It's still a team that is that cheap. $4,100 average for their best players is 16% better than average for run creation. It's just stupidly cheap. They've got a 4.79 implied run total today. It's not like they're at 3.24. It's not like we're talking about the White Sox. The Twins are cheap. Their power upside is cut into a little bit in the home run model by Singer's effectiveness at keeping the ball down, but he's not invulnerable to power in any way. Gave up way more premium contact last year, but again, was good at keeping the ball to a relatively effective trajectory. Little bit higher for home runs, but has always been effective at that. But I think we know that Brady Singer can give up some runs. Twins are interesting. On the FanDuel slate, a lot of these guys are just kind of more priced where they should be, or ish. It's a little bit higher. Like $3,200 average is not a $4,100 DraftKings average. It's a good price. It's not an outrageous price. I feel like the Twins are at outrageously low prices today on DraftKings. Not a single Twin over 5,000. Not Royce Lewis. Not Byron Buxton. Wild. Buxton has 16 homers, a 255 ISO. He's really pulled his season together, and he's making star caliber contact again. 14.4% barrels, 47.7% hard hits, directly in line with his previous season numbers. Kepler's having a mediocre Max Kepler year. 345 chances, just 7 home runs and a 136 ISO, but he has created runs above average, slashing 263, 314, 399. There's nothing wrong with that output, and especially with that output when we know there's definite power upside there. Look at the premium contact Max Kepler made last year. We know he's hit a bunch of home runs over the last few seasons. Carlos Santana, again, cheap. For a guy strikes out just 17.5% of the time, has 15 home runs and a 178 ISO. That's cheap. You could say that, that's around right for a guy with a 178 ISO, but we know that Carlos Santana is a little bit underperforming or has some underperformance over his first 200 and change plate appearances, impacting that number a little bit. This guy who's hit a bunch of home runs as well over the last few years. Switch hitter as well. Very low strikeout. Jeffers, playable catcher with a little bit of power. 17 home runs from him, a 225 ISO. Mediocre contact, a lot of barrels, but medium in terms of the hard hits. But over the last couple seasons, not so much. Better player over the last couple years than he's been this year, and he's definitely given us the power from the catcher spot. And Austin Martin is a cheap mixer down the bottom of the lineup. Again, it's just the value sidetracked me there, but those are a bunch of good bats. I like the Twins' upside. Tough spot. This is 4 corners for sure. I'm going to say, just because of their value pricing, if nothing else, Twins bats. Why not? Twins bats, that 475 total supports that. Twins, Pablo, Singer, Royals. But I do think the Royals are highly playable and maybe semi-interesting. Mamba's saying it's a chalk day today. All signs point that way, unfortunately. Yeah, the Yankees are going to score approximately 3,000 runs today. They probably won't. Being the Yankees, they'll go and score 2. Lose the game to the White Sox 6-2. Yeah, Arizona's another cheap team. And they also look good today, like Trey's pointing out. Maybe see how the Twins work in that spot. How popular are the Twins on DK? I'm going to pull up DK ownership over on RG real quick. We're meandering through this slate, I know, but only 8 games today. We can get away with it. Let's do players first. Ooh, the Twins are not popular at all. Willie Castro is the most popular player, and he's the only one in double digits. Fire away with Twins value if you're feeling it. That's on DraftKings. The Diamondbacks, not crazy popular. And honestly, like if you're not going to the super cheap Del Castillo, the catcher, who's 2,100 over there, then only 2 of the regulars, and it's 2 of the outfielders, are in double digits. Everybody else, and honestly, most of the guys that I would want from the Diamondbacks are in the single digits. No problem going to that spot either. That spot's totally clear on ownership. You're fine. Even the guys who are in the double digits are on the lower end of that. They're not even halfway to 20. Easy on the Diamondbacks. The Yankees are ridiculous. They're basically everybody in the lineup is mid-teens to 20% owned on on DK, and the top end bats on the Yanks were owned in the 20% range or above on the FanDuel slate. Pitching looks exactly like I would expect it to. What did they give Musgrove? Yeah, they got him at the 60 pitches. All right. Third game up, Dodgers and the Brewers. Freddie Peralta, Clay Kershaw. No lineups in? Obviously, we're dealing with some extra high-end pitchers here. Freddie pulling down a 29.4% strikeout rate this season, a 4.02 ERA with a 3.66 xFIP, 13.5% swinging strike rate is pretty dramatically high, 27.6% CSW with that is actually not that good. 103 by stuff plus rating is fine, but he's given up a little bit of home runs and premium contact this season. Not bad in the hard hits and the exit velo department, but a lot of barrels, fly ball trajectory pitcher. The mistakes tend to be loud mistakes against Freddie. 8.9% walks this season isn't really helping his case. A 1.22 whip is a little bit high. Hasn't been the best of Freddie Peralta seasons, but he still possesses a ton of upside on any given slate and a big ceiling. Last time out, 5 innings, gave up 4 earned runs to the Braves at Atlanta, 6 strikeouts, a home run allowed, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks, but 2 homers allowed to the Braves on a road in a game in Milwaukee. The start before that, over 6 innings. The 2 homers were both solo shots. They were the only runs he allowed. Also had a 2-run game to Miami the start before that. 3 earned runs, 5 runs total on 6 hits over 5 1/3. Just 4 strikeouts and 5 walks. Problematic one there. 6 innings against as we just established, a pretty good Twins team. Struck out 8, walked 2, no runs, 2 hits. That's your upside for Freddie. The Dodgers, obviously not an ideal opponent to find ceiling against, but it's a lower end Dodgers team. This bottom of the lineup is really not all that good. Although Mookie's back. I forgot about that. Expected back. I don't know that we've gotten that confirmed. Yep, we do have that confirmed actually because the lineup's out. All right, so forget what I said. Mookie's back. That definitely takes away from what I was about to say about the diminishment of this Dodgers lineup. Let me just drop it in here. Yep. Oops. Don't want to do that. All right. Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Hernandez, Lux and Smith switch. All right. Willie Smith dropping down to 6 today. Rojas. And then it's Enrique Hernandez. All right, so some shuffling there for the Dodgers. It is still weak on the bottom of this lineup. Miguel Rojas, nothing special. Doesn't really strike out much. Puts the ball in play, but nothing special. Enrique Hernandez having a terrible season. And then Kevin Kiermaier, not much of a hitter. But top 6 is now pretty strong and pretty much returned to form. Still no Muncy, but otherwise basically back in action. Definitely hurts Freddie Peralta. 20% strikeout rate for this team. Mookie, obviously, very, very low strikeout. You do have him at 10-something and Rojas at 10.9, kind of helping the average there. Everybody else is a little bit above 20%, but nobody's crazy high except for Kiermaier at 30.9%. And then Teoscar at 27.3, but you obviously get tons of power upside out of him. Kershaw at just 7,700 to 8,000. Again, going to have to consider him at those prices. Hasn't booked 5 innings for us yet. Closest he got was 4 2/3 in the last game. That was against the Phillies. He faced 19 hitters, 5 strikeouts, 5 hits allowed, 1 earned run. Not bad. Didn't walk anybody. I feel like 19 hitters, you limit 1 or 2 fewer hits and you're through the 5 innings there. Considering that we're working our way toward being more stretched out, 6 innings is maybe not off the table, but it's probably less than likely and less likely than a lot of other pitchers on this slate. That is baked into the pricing, specifically at $77 on DraftKings, but even $8,000 on FanDuel. That's a, hey, we don't know that this guy's going to be able to get the quality start, but he's a good pitcher in a good spot, or in a playable spot, kind of a price. He hasn't really found his strikeout upside, but the 18.3 is also a little bit deceiving. Right, first start back, he went 4 innings. He faced 20 Giants hitters. He struck out 6. That third start against the Phils, he struck out 5 of 19. It's just the middle start against the Padres, he faced 21 hitters and he didn't strike out anybody. That was obviously a little bit of an outlier. 3 earned runs, 7 runs scored on 6 hits, no strikeouts, a walk, a home run over 3 2/3. Not exactly Clay Kershaw. He faced 21 hitters in that one. So I think for the price, you can buy in. The Brewers, higher strikeout team for sure than, say, the Padres. A bunch of upper mid-20 strikeout numbers through the top of the lineup. A couple of offsets in the 18.5 and 15.8 from Joey Ortiz and Sal Frelick down lineup. But those are 2 guys who are gettable at worst for Clay Kershaw. And then we're right back up with Andrew Monasterio, who's a pretty weak hitter overall. Let's see if we have the actual lineup. So I think while this Brewers team can be effective, and these guys at the top who do strike out are good run creators with some power, a good mix of power and speed, I feel like Kershaw could give us a reasonable enough start here. Projects out fair enough for the money. Oh, Med Rosario designated by assignment for the Dodgers. Interesting. Kind of thought they were into that spot. If you're going to the Dodgers bats, obviously getting Mookie back is a big shot in the arm. $3,700 on the FanDuel slate feels a little bit inexpensive, especially when he's got 3 positions, second base most specifically, second, short, and outfield. But if I can stick Mookie Betts at second base, that's definitely where I want to put him. 37 combining with 46 for Ohtani makes it difficult to also reach Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez. You probably make a sacrifice in there somewhere. But on FanDuel, keep in mind, you can plug Will Smith in at $3,200, and if you're occupying both first base and util, perfectly fine to do that with him and Freddie Freeman. Or if you're skipping Freddie and going to Will Smith, it's not ideal because you want Freddie Freeman if you can get him, but it's acceptable in this context, I think. So Will Smith makes things work a little bit on FanDuel. A little bit more of a stretch, I think, on DK putting these guys together, but at least you're spreading 5 positions. Maybe you're working Gavin Lux in at second because you don't have Mookie there. Mookie's obviously just at short for 58. Maybe $200 cheap on the DK slate, but they made up for it by pricing Ohtani at 67. 35 home runs and 32 steals with a 318 ISO out of him. Obviously one of the very best hitters in all of baseball in all facets of the game. 298, 385, 616. He is ridiculous. Teoscar for 45 is not expensive on DraftKings. Maybe that helps a little bit get to the full stack there. 14.6% barrels and 47.6% hard hits. 26 home runs at 237 ISO on the season. 137 WRC+. Teoscar's having a strong year. Gavin Lux, 31.27, has come around a little bit. The numbers are a little better looking. Had that really hot stretch. 31.27 is effectively priced for a guy hitting 5th in this lineup between Teoscar and Will Smith. No issues going to the Gavin Lux play. It's just, we've gotten moderate quality out of him. We haven't gotten a ton out of Gavin Lux over time. I do think there's talent there. Solid enough lefty bat to throw at Freddie, and he helps cheapen things up. I think those are his best attributes. 48.32 for Will Smith, like I said, not a mistake to pivot to Will Smith from any of the top-end guys to help you pay for it. 15 home runs, a 186 ISO, a 110 WRC+. And then Rojas, just effectively low strikeout, low walk, a lot of balls in play. Mixed results, 273 for 315, 397, 1% better than average for run creation and no power. And Iker Hernandez, 23% worse than average for run creation and 52% worse than average for Kevin Kiermaier. Both spots are skippable at the bottom of the lineup. Brewers with a 4.04. That's right. Both these teams 4.04 implied total. I think that puts both teams on the board in terms of playability, but limited. Jackson Chourio is a priority. 4,300, 3,000, especially in the leadoff spot. 14 home runs, 16 stolen bases on the year, and everything just trending upward for him. There's a great piece up on Fangraphs about him. Just basically trying to identify. And it was kind of what I was saying the other day about, like, the 14 home runs is good. It's not great. It's good. 16 stolen bases. Not great. It's good. The slash line, not great. Good. 106 WRC plus. The kid's got growing to do before he's the superstar that people wanted to anoint him as. But as the article on Fangraphs concludes, and again, as I've been saying, dude is just 20 years old. He is absurdly young for the major leagues. And what they're pointing at in that really strong piece that I recommend, it's just, if you go to Fangraphs, it's the cover page, the home page. That was the way they wrapped it up, was that, age is his superpower. The fact that he's only 20 and he's made noteworthy strides in basically every facet of hitting in the last, say, 2 months as the season's gone on, and he's really found his footing at the major league level. Limitless ceiling for Jackson Chourio, and he's still cheap on both sides. Rhys Hoskins, 42, 3,000. If he's hitting second, there's a lot of power there. Definitely an interesting right-handed bat to throw at Clay Kershaw, as is Gary Sanchez. You can see a lot of premium contact. 12% barrel rate for both of those guys. Gary a little bit better of a hard hit rate. Smaller sample. That could normalize. He's got 8 home runs and 194 plate appearances. Rhys Hoskins has 20 in 371 chances. Neither guy is all that effective at getting on base, but both are positive run creators so far this season in their relative samples. William Contreras, premium catcher. You can't get both him and Gary on DraftKings, so you're making a price-based decision. Obviously, if you can afford him, Contreras is the better option. He's slashing 283, 356, 447, 124 WRC plus. He's a truly excellent hitter. Gary's got more power. I don't think it's arguable that Gary Sanchez has more power than William Contreras. But you're going to Contreras more often than not. What I'm saying is Gary is an acceptable pivot for home run upside, especially against the lefty. Willie Adames for 5,000, 3,400, 21 homers, 13 steals, 202 ISO, 118 WRC plus. Tip of the cap to Willie. We've been acknowledging it most of the season. I mean, he is having a dynamite year, and he hasn't come down as far as I thought he would in terms of the slash line. 251, 334, 453. I was expecting a lower average, lower on base from him by now at this point in the season. He's maintained a very strong year. High-end option at shortstop, not Bobby Witt, not Corey Seager, but next tier down, having a good year. Blake Perkins, 24-27, mix and match piece, 6 home runs, 17 steals, and 97 WRC plus. Joey Ortiz for 35-26. You could do a lot worse. Fairly low strikeout, high walk, medium contact, 40% hard hit rate is good. 252, 349, 409. Creating runs 14% better than average. Playable part, outfield only on, third base only. I was going to say outfield. Third base only on DraftKings at 3,500. Third base and second base makes him even more interesting on FanDuel. 2,600 at second base. I can definitely get to some Joey Ortiz if I'm going to Brewers lineups. Sal Frelick, Andrew Monasterio, a lot more mix and match kind of options. Frelick gets on at a decent clip, 344 on base, 15 stolen bases, just a 98 WRC plus with that. Doesn't hit the ball particularly hard, but another guy, low strikeout, a lot of balls in play. Monasterio, not much of a hitter. Dodgers bats. Freddie Peralta. Clay Kershaw value. Brewers bats. I think. You could easily reverse the two pitchers. It might be Dodgers bats, Clay Kershaw value, Freddie Peralta, Brewers bats. Another four corners game, though. As good as the pitching looks in this game, given that both teams are implied over 4 runs, I think they're at least playable with potentially some sneaky low-owned upside. And I tell you what, the Brewers are also pretty cheap. Just looking at that Brewers lineup, if you wanted to top 5 that, 4,400 apiece. Not quite as cheap as the Twins are, but cheap. Chalk spot of the day for the Yankees. I'm glad I thought of it to check the... Man, Labs is behind today. Both of these lineups are in. I'll grab them. It's just annoying that Labs isn't keeping up with us today. Oh, there we go. Maybe I just needed to reload. The pop-ups weren't working. All right, both lineups in. Obviously, the White Sox, not at all appealing. They're facing Luis Gil, who, against a better team, I might be talking a little bit more about how much he's been pitching over his head this season and, relative concerns. But he's made it work, for one thing. Stuff Plus, I believe, still likes the Arsenal at an above average rate. Yep, 109.94. Nice mark for Stuff Plus for the full Arsenal. He's a fly ball pitcher at an 18-degree average launch. He's given up 8.5% barrels, but he's been very good otherwise at limiting hard hits, 36.2% hard hits. Exit velo, debatable, 89.3 miles an hour of exit velo is trending toward the higher side. 2.06% home runs. I land in the middle. I'm kind of fence sitting on whether or not that's a totally lucky number. It's probably lucky to be that low, but I don't think it's should be in the fours kind of territory. 28.5% strikeouts. The problem really comes in around the 12% walks. But with that, a 1-1-1 whip is not bad. 11.5% swinging strikes is good. 27.4% CSW is all right. 3.06 ERA, you can see the overperformance there. The xFIP a full run higher. A manageable xFIP, but not nearly a star. That makes you much more of an average kind of a pitcher, especially against that 12% walk rate. So 9,000 for just the strikeout upside, the matchup, the fact that there's no Lou Bob in the White Sox lineup, as I'm just noticing now. Forget everything any warts I was just trying to find on Luis Hill just got completely erased by the fact that the only good hitter on the White Sox is not even in the lineup today. This is a pathetic team. You can fire away with Luis Hill for 9,000. For 10-8 on FanDuel, it's a really challenging price to reach for that pitcher. But it's a great spot. There's nothing negative to say about it at this point. My one thing would be I'd probably rather just take Blake Snell even against the Braves in that killer spot at the end of the night. Or if I'm going at 10-8, I'd probably at least explore how I could find 400 more for Chris Snell. I did it again. Chris Sale. I cannot have those two names together. Chris Sale on the other side of that game. It's a really tough price for Luis Hill, even in this matchup on FanDuel. But significant ceiling. And then Kai Busch on the other side, I just kind of feel bad for him. I don't think there's a universe in which somebody's planning on playing this guy. Let's just skip to the Yankees lineup. Alex Verdugo off the top, lefty. I don't care. Against this pitcher, does it matter? Is there any reason in the world to discuss this guy? Let's take a look. The one outing that he had against Oakland, he went 4 innings, struck out 3, walked 5, 3 earned runs on 2 hits. In AAA this season, 19 innings, 2 starts for 4 games. We won't really concern ourselves with a 6.16 ERA and a 5.08 xFIP and just an 18.8% strikeout rate and an 11.8% walk rate in that small sample. But over 14 starts in AA this season as a 24-year-old, 80 2/3, 2.12 ERA, which is good, but a 3.77 xFIP, just a 24.6% strikeout rate. That's all right. 10.1% walk rate is challenging. 3.62 FIP. It was all right in AA. Got to give him that much. Last year in AA, he had a major home run problem. Just 9 starts, 41 2/3, but he also had that problem in... all right, so we're at actually 15 starts, about 67 2/3 across 2 different stops in AA. 2+ home runs per 9 across that sample of AA starts, again as a 23-year-old. I think we can throw Yankees bats at this kid. Verdugo. Off the top. I both love and hate that he's got his gigantic chains on in the Fangraphs picture. Or I guess that's his official MLB picture. George Steinbrenner, I think, would be rolling over in his grave. Man who didn't allow sideburns. Against fellow lefties, Verdugo slashing 228, 312, 301 with a .073 ISO and an 80 WRC+. Those aren't good numbers. It's not crazy far off the 243, 292, 399 with a 157 ISO and a 94 WRC plus that he's provided against righties. He just hits for like no power when he happens to hit against lefties. He's actually getting on base at a slightly higher clip, but obviously creating fewer runs. Strikes out slightly more, but it's still just 17.6%. Actually draws a little bit of a better walk rate against fellow lefties. He's fine. It's just Verdugo's just not that good overall. 32-27 for anybody ahead of Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. You can obviously buy. I would just rather go in another direction because, for one, that's 4 outfielders from on FanDuel that you would want. 4 outfielders on DraftKings is obviously impossible. Soto and Judge, 64 and 69 on DK, 42 and 47 on FanDuel. You obviously want them both in any given lineup. A 14.20 for Soto. Judge leading the slate at 18.66 in the home run model. Soto hit his 30th of the season, I believe, yesterday. Judge is at 42 on the season, 285 ISO and a 371 ISO, respectively, a 186 and a 217 WRC plus. Just dynamite, killer, ridiculous, absurd seasons. Find something wrong with either of those players. I challenge you. Contact, just absolutely elite. Judge strikes out at a little bit of a high clip, but he walks at an 18.7% rate, and he makes contact like no one else in baseball. So we'll forgive a little bit higher of a strikeout rate. Soto's elite in both categories. They're ridiculous. They're worth the money if you can get there. Giancarlo Stanton, and I will say, putting them together in a lineup, as challenging as it might be, and as much as it probably demands going to, for one, a very, very cheap other stack, and maybe the Yankees are better as a 3-man today to help make that work, like a 5-man Twins, 3-man Yankees maybe works, although you're using a bunch of those twin spots on outfielders, so maybe that doesn't work great. Regardless, there's a cheap team out there, I'm sure, to combine them with where you can get both Judge and Soto in the lineup. And since they're both at such high prices, I think it does have a little bit of a limiting impact. It's the most natural thing to want to put those guys together. But I think just based on how pricing falls, people do end up saying, all right, let me go to Stanton. Let me go to somebody else from this team. Let me go to Jazz Chisholm. Somebody else down lineup from this team. And they start to get a little bit separated. So within a very chalky Yankee stack in which both of those guys will individually be very high owned, I think them being both so high priced will at least create a little bit of a bubble around the lineups where those guys are combined. Not going to be unique on its own, but it'll help. Stanton, 46-29, like I said, almost made him the home run pick of the day until I saw how popular he's going to be. He's right there with those guys in terms of the premium contact. 19.1% barrels, 53.8% hard hits. Giancarlo Stanton hits the ball incredibly, incredibly hard. 20 home runs in just 316 plate appearances, a 250 ISO, and a 123 WRC plus. He was having a very good season before he was derailed a little bit by yet another injury. 316 plate appearances. They were talking about it during the Yankees game yesterday. With as hard as both players have been over the last few seasons, Stanton's actually had a little bit better output than, it hurts me to say, Mike Trout. I didn't actually look at the numbers as they were talking it through, and it was Michael Kay and Paul O'Neill talking about it, so take it with a grain of salt. But Stanton has very strong numbers when he's in the lineup, let's put it that way, and he's very affordable. Austin Wells having a strong season for a young catcher, not getting enough buzz. 8 home runs, a 166 ISO, 118 WRC plus, hitting in the heart of the Yankees lineup every day. Solid lefty bat for 4,200. Guy that's kind of fallen off a little bit is Ben Rice, not in the lineup again today. Another lefty. The Yanks have faced a bunch of lefties lately. It's hurting Ben Rice's ability to get in the lineup because they're platooning him and DJ a little bit. But you get Wells, despite being a lefty in there, and he's held his own against same-handed pitching this season. Glaber for 36-26 has 10 home runs, a 117 ISO, and 91 WRC plus. Has been really weak all season, but maybe that's a reason to get to him against a really weak lefty. There's got to be some upside for Glaber Torres, a player who had a very strong year last year and is just effectively cheap at second base and helps pay for the Judge and Stanton shares. I can get to some Glaber today against Kai Busch. Jazz Chisholm, 51-33. I don't care about the lefty here either. 11% barrels for 5,100 at third base on DraftKings. Still has second base and outfield eligibility on FanDuel. 20 home runs, 26 stolen bases, a 189 ISO, a 112 WRC plus. Nice shot in the arm for this Yankees lineup. I think that's the second time I've used the phrase shot in the arm in the last 15 minutes. Anthony Volpe, 37, 3,000, 11 home runs, 20 steals. A lot of up and down performance out of Volpe, but he can be there on the right day for counting stats. It's just there's no reliability. I'd rather have another shortstop, but the Yankees are prohibitively expensive at the top of the lineup for the guys that you really want. So if you're going to them, you're not paying for Bobby Witt, Corey Seager, et cetera, et cetera. So in a lot of ways, you might as well go to Volpe. You're going to be stuck with a medium shortstop at best either way. You'd much rather have Volpe than, let's say, Nicky Lopez on the other side of this game. DJ LeMahieu, kind of a lost cause. 198, 272, 265 over what's now 185 plate appearances. Even against the lefty, I'd kind of rather just see what Ben Rice can do. Right-handed bat, former batting title winner. I mean, just the dramatic fall off of DJ LeMahieu should be explored by scientists at some point. Just ridiculous. After he got paid, he went away. I don't know what happened. Maybe that's what happened. On the White Sox side, I just don't see it. Nicky Lopez, Lennon Sosa, Andrew Benintendi, Andrew Vaughn, Gavin Sheets, not exactly an intimidating top five. Nobody's expensive at all. Vaughn, the most expensive player at $4,200. Andrew Vaughn is the only player in the White Sox lineup above even $3,000 on DraftKings today. Nobody above $3,000 on the FanDuel slate, but those are very different prices. $3,000 on FanDuel is different than $3,000 on DraftKings. That's absurd. I mean, it's correct. It might be absurd that Andrew Vaughn is even above 4,000 at 42. He's got 14 home runs and a 91 WRC plus on the season. They're cheap, but it's not a good way to access those expensive pitchers or those expensive bats. I'm telling you right now. Nicky Lopez has a 75 WRC plus. He's slashing 243, 311, 296 with 0 home runs and a .053 ISO. He has a 0.8% barrel rate and a 16.9% hard hit rate. Ouch. You wouldn't even say ouch if Nicky Lopez literally hit you with the baseball bat on one of his swings. You'd just be like, oh, that was weird. Lennon Sosa hits the ball harder. 6.8% barrels, 41.6% hard hits. Just 4 home runs and 221 plate appearances. 59 WRC plus and a .095 ISO despite the 41.6% hard hits. No results. 2,400, 2,300. He's very, very cheap. You would put him at second base over third base, but it's very limiting. Andrew Benintendi, a slap hitter who's not slap hitting. 211, 264, 365, a 73 WRC plus. Vaughn, again, 14 homers and a 161 ISO leads this lineup, but terrible. Gavin Sheets for 26, 25, slashing 222, 302, 351, and 85 WRC plus, and it gets worse from there with Corey Lee, Dom Fletcher, Corey Julks, and Brooks Baldwin going down the lineup. There's really nothing to talk about down lineup. 67, 46, 88, 52 are your WRC plus marks. From Corey Lee down, you've got a total of 13 home runs across 4 hitters and let's call it 600 plate appearances. Nobody above the 6.9% barrels that Corey Lee is pulling in. If you're going to the White Sox on DraftKings, put Corey Lee in your lineup. How about that as a call from the White Sox? 9 home runs, 5 steals, and 289 plate appearances. He costs you $2,300. He's got a 6.9% barrel and a 39.9% hard hit. So I would prioritize if I was going to the White Sox, which you should not do at all. It would probably be a 2-4-6 mini stack. Lennon Sosa, Andrew Vaughn, Corey Lee if I was doing it. But I could say, if you told me I had to have 5, Sosa, Vaughn, Sheets, Lee. Probably Julks, but having Dom Fletcher there is just as good for the minimum. There's nothing appealing about anything down lineup. But again, if you're doing it, do yourself the favor of at least including the $2,300 catcher in your DraftKings lineup that is destined to fail. Yankees bats way up top. There's going to be popularity, but I do think there's ways you can string them together that greatly reduces the damage that any popularity might do. Luis Gil 2, and then nothing at all from the White Sox side for me. It doesn't look like we got these lineups in yet. All right, Bowden Francis, 58.75. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. He's got a 5.44 ERA and a 4.49 xFIP over his 49 and 2/3 this year in 5 starts. 36 and a third of relief work last year. He had a very good 1.73 ERA, but completely betrayed by an xFIP that's, what, 3 runs higher? 3 and change? That's ridiculous. Obviously we're talking about limited innings in relief, just working an inning at most at a time. You can go max effort in that situation, which explains the difference between the strikeout rate. He is not this pitcher in a starting role in terms of the strikeouts. The walks are up a little bit in a starting role this season. The xFIP is higher than it was last year, and the ERA has normalized in the direction of that xFIP. He gave up a bunch of premium contact, 10.9% barrels, 41.3% hard hits, and 90 miles an hour in the exit velo in the relief role. Got probably a little bit lucky keeping that at 3.68% home runs. That's in a very limited number of innings, and you can see it's already come to bite him in a small sample of innings this year at 49 and 2/3 in 5 starts. 11.6% barrels, 38.7% hard hits, 5+% home runs is obviously super targetable. Angels are not the best team in the world to talk about rostering for DFS purposes, but on a day like today, we can see some home run upside creeping through. 7.31 for the full lineup is a pretty good total, and 7.84 up at the top in the top 6 here gives you a little bit of upside among the Taylor Wards, the Logan O'Hoppies, the Zach Nettos of the world. They're more playable guys. Down lineup, if you get Joe Adell, also at a 9+, you don't necessarily sleep on him against a pitcher like this. Joe Adell comes and goes for talent, but you can typically, if you're casting a net, you probably want to cast it over the days where he's facing a pitcher like this rather than Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole gives up enough home runs, rather than Chris Sale, whose name I said correctly because it's not right next to Blake Snell's. On the other side, Davis Daniel. Actually, let me real quick. For what it's worth, Bowden Francis did strike out 7 Orioles over 5 innings in his most recent outing. That was a full start on the 7th. Faced 19 Orioles, gave up 2 earned on 3 hits. If he does that, obviously whoever's got him is going to be off to a very good start. Just 2 strikeouts against the same Orioles team in Baltimore the start before that. In the middle, he had a relief, just faced 2 hitters in relief at Yankee Stadium. Against Baltimore, he went 5 and 2/3. He gave up 3 earned, 2 home runs, 6 hits, struck out just 2 and walked 1. Got to go all the way back to June 9th for another start. That was only 4 innings. Was effective, no runs, 3 hits. That was against the A's, struck out just 3. Even against this Angels team, I'm really skeptical. I guess at 58, if you wanted to call him a bargain bin dart throw, I don't really have that much of a problem with it. And I think he projects out fairly like that. Right, just under 12 in DraftKings is not off the board. FanDuel, I'm really skeptical about the ability to book 6 innings. The 5 and 2/3, a couple starts back against the Orioles is encouraging, but that's easily his deepest start of the year. It's dicier on FanDuel, but again, that is a friendly enough price. This Angels team has a 21.6% strikeout rate. I don't love it overall. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's got a ton of upside. It doesn't project that way, and he's never really pitched that way outside of maybe that. If you combine those 2 Orioles starts, that's kind of a good outing. For this price at SP2, you can maybe get away with it. Very thin maybe. At that price on FanDuel, I would probably leave it alone. Going back to Daniel. He had that one effective start. That first game was his best game. He went 8 innings against the Tigers. He struck out 8. Really surprised us that day. 4 hits, no runs. Since then, struck out 3 over 5 1/3 against the A's, but gave up 4 earned on 7 hits. Just 3 strikeouts, 7 earned runs on 8 hits over 3 2/3 against Texas. 5 strikeouts, probably his second best start. He went 5 innings against the Rockies in a home start in Los Angeles. 5 innings, 1 run on 5 hits, 5 strikeouts, and a walk. 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, a home run allowed, and 5 earned runs on 7 hits over just 3 1/3 against the Yankees. The Blue Jays comp a little bit closer to the Yankees and the Rangers than they do the Tigers, the A's, or the Rockies, even with their struggles this year. They're relatively low strikeout, 21.9%. That average is pushed up at the bottom of the lineup by those 230% in fewer than 100 plate appearances apiece. And then Dalton Varsho at 26.5 up toward the top of the lineup, as well as Joey Loperfido at 39.1 over 151 in the middle of the lineup. Those guys more likely than not will be in the lineup, so it's not like it's completely, an illusion. But the good hitters in this lineup, the key bats in this lineup, the Vladdys, the Springers, the Horowitzes, and the Kirks of the world are all in the mid-teens. Ernie Clement is at a 6.6% strikeout rate. So I tend to think this is more of a spot where we're taking Blue Jays bats than a $7,200 Davis Daniel. Maybe he qualifies for a few bargain bin shares, but I think I actually like Bowden Francis at 58 better. Just for one, because of that dramatic price offset. But the Angels are definitely not as good a team as the Blue Jays, regardless of what some of the home run numbers might be saying. You can succeed more frequently against the Blue Jays than against an effectively low strikeout, or against the Angels than an effectively low strikeout Blue Jays lineup. If you were these two similarly medium talented pitchers, young guys without a lot of track record. Overall for Daniel, it amounts to a 21.1% strikeout rate. I tell you what, the walk rate at 3.7% is good. 6.04 ERA is very, very high and very bad. The xFIP is a little bit better at 3.93, but that's still a fairly high xFIP. 1.38 whip is not overly manageable. Limited strike thrower. It's given up a lot of premium contact. It's led to a little bit of power, so there's believable, even beyond these numbers probably, home run upside for the Blue Jays on the right day. Obviously, Vladdy at 7.34, you can put that over 10, and I would have completely believed it because it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr., one of the best hitters in baseball. 319, 392, 543 on the season, a 224 ISO, 23 home runs, 14% barrels, and 55.4% hard hits. Remember when everybody was panicking about Vladdy and he's only hitting the ball on the ground, he's not hitting home runs, and blah, 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 blah. This is why you don't panic about small samples in baseball. George Springer for 47, 3,000 up at the top of the lineup, 14 homers, 13 steals, a 147 ISO, and 91 WRC plus in a much more complete sample. Now that's a concerning season out of Springer. 221, 300, 369, most specifically. If he was like hitting for average and getting on base and correlating a little bit even, we'd be talking about him. All right, he's not hitting for power anymore. He's not stealing as many bases as we thought. Actually, if he was doing that, he'd probably be stealing more bases too. But we wouldn't be as concerned. Right now, it's just kind of like in the middle, below average, 8.1% barrels and 37.4% hard hits. We're not far off of his previous season marks. Same thing with the strikeouts and the walks. But we're not exactly, providing numbers that I can point to and say, here's something really, really good to cling to. This is average contact. It's okay strikeout and walk rates. So he's been tough, but the prices are right for career history for what we know this player is capable of. Dalton Varsho, a lot less so, 3,700, 2,800. He does have 14 home runs and 10 stolen bases and a 196 ISO on the season. He's hit for more power than Springer. He's been, there's not all that much daylight between those numbers, but Springer's been a little bit better in terms of the slash line. Varsho's a flawed player, but he does have counting stat upside. He also strikes out at a 26.5% clip. Harwitz on the other side of Vladdy, 3,800, 2,700 for all his on-base skills. Pretty good buy. I like him at second base on either site for the money. That's an easy option if you're going to the Blue Jays. Probably the second highest priority hitter in that lineup for me. Getting on at a 363 clip, creating runs 20% better than average. He's more of a contact and on-base guy, and honestly, he should probably be leading off for this team. Lead him off and let Springer hit 5. Or let Springer hit cleanup. Or let Springer hit 3 and drop Vladdy to the cleanup spot. Again, they're just trying to go lefty-righty, or righty-lefty in this case. But Harwitz, not really a cleanup hitter. What he can do in that role is if Vladdy blasts one, he resets the table for Kirk, Loperfido, and so on. So it's like every 2 guys, there's somebody who can reset the table a little bit, because Ernie Clement should be able to do that. He has not done it effectively over 286 plate appearances, just a 292 on base, despite putting the ball in play with just absurd frequency, 6.6% strikeouts and 2.4% walks. All he does is make contact and put the ball in play. It's resulted in a 271 average, the bad on base percentage, 6 home runs, 8 steals, a 403 slug, 93 WRC plus. Between him and Harwitz, you get Alejandro Kirk, who is a okay bat at catcher, 244, 313, 335, not much power at a .091 ISO, 3 home runs. Another, soft spot in the lineup when it comes to power output, but another guy who doesn't really strike out much, puts the ball in play a lot, and is hitting it fairly hard this year. 7.5% barrels and 40.9% hard hits. For 3,100 where you have to play catchers, if you're going to the Blue Jays, don't sleep on Alejandro Kirk if he's hitting there. Loper Fido for 25 on both sites. Just 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases, and 151 plate appearances in the show, and striking out nearly 40% of the time. Overall, probably needed more seasoning in the minor leagues. Got called up aggressively early by that Astros team. At the time, he had, I think, 10 home runs and was leading all of professional baseball. This was in late April, early May. And has kind of just foundered in the major leagues so far. But there's talent there. There's power there. Interesting enough bat if he's in the lineup from the left side. Addison Barger and Leo Jimenez at the bottom of the lineup, kind of dragging things down. Big strikeout rates, limited output so far, mix and match options. If you're going to the Angels for cheap against the Francis downside, which I definitely think is worth doing, despite saying that Francis maybe is a bargain bin SP2 at 5,800. Shanuel off the top is 344 on base, a 105 WRC plus is appealing. 12 home runs from the left side is not bad. He's not really a power bat, but he's low strikeout, high walk, gets involved a lot. Good correlated scoring option now. Has really come around for the season. Zach Neto at 46.33, one of their better players, 17 home runs, 21 steals, a 201 ISO, 121 WRC plus. Not a bad season at all out of Zach Neto, who was one of the first call-ups from his draft class when they brought him up last year. So I like Neto at the price. He's an interesting option. He's not fully priced yet for the output that he's provided already this season on DraftKings. 3,300 on FanDuel is probably about right now. Logan O'Hoppe, 4,700, 3,000. A little bit cheap on FanDuel where you could easily just play him as a first baseman. 11.65 in the home run model today against an 11.2% barrel rate, 46.9% hard hits on the season. 16 home runs and 395 chances, a 175 ISO, 111 WRC plus. One of the 3 guys in this lineup creating runs at a positive clip. Willie Calhoun, mix and match quality, 28-25. Capable of putting bat on ball, but not much more than that. 2.6% barrels and 38.1% hard hits. Would be more interesting in a different spot in the lineup. Kind of miscast in the cleanup role. But playable if you're stacking up a bunch of Angels. Probably doesn't make it in my first cut lineup. Taylor Ward for 46.28. I definitely want to get involved. 16 home runs over 474 plate appearances. Not ideal output. A 161 ISO, just a 99 WRC plus, but a guy who's provided quality over the last couple seasons, a 12.5% barrel rate and a 42.4% hard hit rate. I'm still a buyer with the price coming down. Cheaper at 28 on FanDuel than he is at 46 on DraftKings. Rendon, 35.27 across sites. 250, 317, 299, no homers, 5 steals from a guy who doesn't care about playing baseball in 161 chances. They'd be better off putting somebody else in the lineup, and so would you. Mickey Moniak, 28-26, mediocre season, 226, 265, 355. In that context, I accidentally used the word mediocre to mean terrible. 7 home runs and 6 steals, a 70 WRC plus, barely worth consideration. Brendan Drury, barely worth considering at this point also. 237 chances, 157, 241, 195 with 1 home run, a 26 WRC plus from a guy who over the last 2 years hit a bunch of home runs. Jumped into the role of being a power hitter, made a change with his average, with the way he was swinging to generate more launch, and it really made a difference over the last 2 years, and now it's just gone. Joe Adele at the bottom again. I would play 32-31 across sites, way cheaper on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel, but that FanDuel price is not bad, especially with everybody else at least affordable. 17 homers and 14 steals, a 192 ISO. That's the good. 204, 281, 395, and a 27.7% strikeout rate is the bad. Little tiebreaker with the 11.5% barrels, 44.9% hard hits, and a long track record of being talked about as potentially great power hitter. Has never fully landed. Maybe is never going to fully arrive, completely cooked or correctly constructed. But there's a lot of individual slate upside there. Blue Jays bats, Angels bats, but it's really, really close. Bowden Francis value at 5,800 on DraftKings, and really none of the other pitching spots. If you had to have it on FanDuel at 75 for Francis, it's probably not a good idea. But that would be, I think, the next most playable over Daniel. I just don't like Daniel's upside here. 3 games to go, coming up on 5:30. We are definitely meandering through this slate. Andy Melman's here, got Wi-Fi in the air, watching us up on the plane. Hopefully that means, Larry, or Andy, that you forgot your headphones and you've got the show on the laptop and you're just playing it on volume, like apparently is becoming more and more acceptable these days. I don't know, maybe I'm old and back in my day we used headphones. We didn't just play our music on the subway. But hopefully everybody on your plane can hear me right now. Hello, everyone. I hope you have a nice, safe flight. Michael Nax calling the Neto bomb. Love it. Cleveland's going to see Def Leppard and Journey tonight. Awesome. Enjoy that. That sounds like a show that'll be at the Garden State Arts Center sometime this year. Or already was. 8 games here. Pink hand wave saying, did someone say 8 games? Lone Wolf is here. Lone Wolf hit another one. Congrats to him. I think it was yesterday. Sent us a little tweet. Always appreciate those guys when they pop up. When you hit something, especially if you got the logo on your screen, you can grab that in Discord or from the site or whatever. But if you happen to have that, tweet me the results at rotoscouts. I'll retweet it. I'll congratulate you. But Lone Wolf hit another first place. It's been a few lately. Looks like a 3-entry max. The 7K home plate on DraftKings yesterday put up 187 points. Won it clear by 10 points. Not bad. Mr. Ship My Money down in the 6th spot. Not a bad run. As Lone Wolf pointed out, he took out Ship My Money in that one. Not a bad result for Adam either, though. So congrats to Lone Wolf, and tweet those out and gives us a little bit of amplification. I appreciate that. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle if you get a chance. Really, the only things that go out there are things like that, announcements of winners, congratulations for winners, and then just links to the site. But if you can like and retweet those things, it does help. Like and subscribe here also helps a little bit. One of the top pitching options on the slate going in this one, it's the Rockies. They're against a righty and they're on the road, so obviously that leads to appeal for the starting pitcher on the other side. 8,600 also really feeds the appeal for Brandon Pfaadt. He's going to be popular on DraftKings, no doubt about it, but it is a very, very good spot. It's one of those spots I think you could just eat some chalk on. Definitely worth getting to at 86 here. 9,200 on FanDuel. Like I said, if I can manage to get my way there, even with some popularity, I'm going to try and get there. And I think I can. Going to see how some different kind of bats fit together. 3.92 ERA with a 3.76 xFIP on the season for Pfaadt. 22.2% strikeout rate with a 5.2% walk rate, generating an 11% swinging strike rate. Not a bad CSW. Stuff Plus likes the arsenal. He's only allowed 6.7% barrels, despite giving up a little bit of exit velo and hard hit. Were perfectly manageable. All of this is within expectations and looks pretty normal across the board there. So that's not a surprising home run rate against that. Not particularly high, not particularly low. Last year, he was worse in terms of the premium contact and the power, but most of that came in that ugly stretch of games that he had early in the season. Went back down, corrected some stuff in a stretch of minor league starts, came back, was a totally different pitcher second half and through the playoffs last year. Tons of upside against the Rockies team that has a 25.9% strikeout rate for this projected lineup. The confirmed lineup is not in, but the Diamondbacks is. Bradley Blaylock on the other side. All right. 4,000 on DraftKings. 55 on FanDuel is just a no. Against a effective Diamondbacks team on a day where they're pulling a 5.5 implied total in Vegas, it's just a firm no. On the DraftKings slate, in 16 starts in AA this year, he had a 4.08 ERA with a 4.02 xFIP, which is manageable. It's not bad. 20.2% strikeouts and 8.5% walks against effectively most of their good hitters, low strikeout Diamondbacks team. Seems challenging. Mid-20s for strikeouts through small samples in A-ball, high A. the seasons before that. Not crazy advanced age, but he was like, in 2021, he was 20 years old pitching in low A, 86 and a third. That's by far his biggest sample here. 23 starts. He had a 21.8% strikeout rate, 9.2% walks, 4.27 ERA with a 4.40 xFIP. Just four starts here, 7 starts there across the past couple of seasons, or I guess that's across 2023. So it looks like he didn't pitch in 2022. 23, he made 15 starts across 3 levels. Or no, excuse me, across A-ball and high A, just with Boston and Milwaukee, so he switched teams. I don't know. I feel like if he had all that much talent, he wouldn't have switched teams like 4 times in the last 2 years. I see nothing appealing even at 4,000 in the minor league game log to suggest to me, or the minor league numbers, to suggest that he's going to beat the Diamondbacks today or have even an effective start for that money. I think you're getting maybe around that median. 10-ish DraftKings points for your 4,000. If you're just considering it like, hey, I'm just buying a hitter who's going to give me about 10 points with a major downside, then I guess. I mean, that's just the nature of the $4,000 pitcher play. But I do not think he's got any kind of ceiling here. Rockies bats are pretty much a no. I mean, they're not unplayable and they are cheap. And there are still bats I like Michael Talia if he's in the lineup. 13.16 in the home run model. 19 homers over 281 chances, a 268 ISO. We talk about this guy a lot. He also strikes out at a 32% clip, which supports the upside for Brandon Pfaadt. Charlie Blackmon is not appealing. 4,200, 2,700. Is a lefty hitter. He gets on base at a 331 clip, but doesn't really score or create runs. Just a 90 WRC plus. Ezequiel Tovar, 19 home runs, a 191 ISO, just a 95 WRC plus. Good season for him and improving and up and coming young shortstop for this team. He's cheap. He's easy to get to, but I really don't like the upside for them. Vegas doesn't like it. Seems like a bad spot. Tovar's a top priority if you're going to the Rockies as a cheap angle into the slate, but doesn't look like it's going to work out. Brenton Doyle, 49, 31, 20 home runs, 22 stolen bases, a 205 ISO. Probably the overall top priority player in this on this team if you're going to that angle. 41, 28 for Ryan McMahon is effective for a lefty with a little bit of power. 11.8% barrels, 49.8% hard hits. 16 home runs. He's been stuck there for a minute. 253, 344, 425. We've been declining for a while now overall with McMahon, but he's still having a strong season in the aggregate, and he's very, very cheap at third base. Brendan Rodgers hits the ball hard, 45% hard hits, mixed results. A 90 WRC plus is not good, 278, 327, 408. You can be effective with that slash line, but just really hasn't found consistent success. Playable at second base at 38-26 if you're going to Rockies, but not a reason to go to the Rockies. Chris Bryant, pretty skippable, 2 home runs and 155 plate appearances. I have problems skipping Chris Bryant if I'm stacking Rockies, which is another reason not to stack Rockies today, so you just don't make the Chris Bryant mistake. 37-25. He's difficult to ignore at those prices, but he has not been the old Chris Bryant in several seasons now. Elias Diaz, mix and match catcher. Jake Cave, just another outfielder at the bottom. On the Diamondback side, there's a lot more appeal for this team, one of the top teams on the board. Again, when we were looking at those DraftKings popularity numbers back at the beginning of the show, hours and hours ago, they didn't look as high owned as I was expecting them to be in this spot. So they're kind of interesting. Only Adrian Del Castillo at 2,100 was drawing significant ownership. If you skip him, then it's just, Carroll was in the double digits. And who else? Who was the other guy? It was one of the other, I think, Jake McCarthy. Might have been Thomas. But it wasn't, notably, Ketel Marte. It wasn't Jock Peterson. It wasn't Josh Bell. It wasn't Eugenio Suarez, who are all outside of Marte affordably priced, if not just dirt cheap, for their upside against Bradley Blaylock. So considering that all of those guys I just named are owned, at least projection-wise, in the single digits, it makes the Diamondbacks super easy to work with today. I don't know that that's true on the FanDuel slate. Let me see where they got them projected over there. And again, this is all per RG's ownership projections, which, come and go for quality. We appreciate them. Not in a, like, they've given permission to, like, look at their stuff. Like, I just pay for access, and I don't give away their information. And they probably don't know it all about this show, so it goes by the wayside. But again, don't actually give away the numbers. We're pretty fine on FanDuel as well. It's really only Carroll that's at all popular. And same thing, like all the guys I actually want from this lineup are low owned to not problematically owned. Obviously on FanDuel, the Del Castillo thing doesn't exist. He's like the lowest owned player. Yeah, there's a lot of appeal to the Diamondbacks today. Carroll for 46-33 at the top of the lineup, 11 home runs, 21 stolen bases, a 308 on-base percentage, a 93 WRC+, plus, a 162 ISO. The numbers do look better than they did. He's striking out at just a 17.8% clip, which is actually 2 points better or a point and a half better than he did last season. He's drawing a 10.4% walk rate, which is a point and a half better than he did, 2 points better than he did last season. He's not hitting the ball nearly as hard as he did last year. Maybe finding a little bit of effectiveness around the edges of a bad season. Like you at least like to have things to point to say, like, look, we've still got something to believe in here. Over the last month, 254, 346, 620. 6 home runs, most of which came in he hit 2 home runs this weekend. I didn't catch that. Yeah, it's coming off a good weekend. Two home run weekend. 3 hits in 8 plate appearances Saturday, Sunday. He's hit 6 home runs since July 20th. If you stretch that back actually to July 13th, second to last game pre-All-Star. So give him just before the All-Star break. It's 8 home runs. 256, 355, 667, and has created runs 71% better than average over that stretch. 17.2% strikeouts, 11.8% walks, a ridiculous 410 ISO in that stretch. That's 93 really good plate appearances for Corbin Carroll. The prices have crept back up a little bit. Considering that he's going to be the highest owned, I'm still all right skipping over him, but it's gotten a little bit more challenging. Definitely more production there. At worst, it doesn't diminish the Diamondbacks' quality as a stack, having him in the leadoff spot. So definitely gotten an improvement over the last month and change. Ketel Marte just having a superstar quality season at second base. 6,200, 3,800. He's got 30 home runs this year. I don't know that Ketel Marte is getting talked about enough, honestly. 11.6% barrels, 53.4% hard hits, just 18% strikeouts, a 264 ISO, a 152 WRC+. Plus. Absolutely killer season for the second baseman. He's expensive, but he's worth it. 42-31 for Jock, 19 home runs in 333 chances, 264 ISO for him, matches Marte's output, a 160 WRC plus in fewer plate appearances, 13.4% barrels for Jock, 46.5% hard hits, made in a lab to absolutely mash against pitchers like Mookie Blaylock here. Hat tip to Mookie Blaylock. Actually, didn't Mookie Blaylock end up in prison? Yeah, vehicular homicide. That's not good. Well, anyway, been making Mookie Blaylock references all day. Forgot that. It just popped into my head that he, well, moving on. Might not be the best guy. So, Jock Peterson, designed in a lab to hit home runs against a guy like Bradley Blaylock here. Josh Bell for 35-28, pretty cheap. 19.5% strikeouts and 7.8% walks. He was doing that through most of the season. What's interesting is the home run totals jumped. We're up to 18 home runs now, 175 ISO, a 102 WRC+. Plus. Since joining Arizona, which was at the trade deadline, Bell has, in 46 plate appearances, hit 4 home runs, slashing 286, 348, 643 with a 357 ISO. His created runs 69% better than average. We're not talking about a ton of games yet. It's just basically all of August. But he's been markedly better. And he was actually starting to trend upward a little bit before leaving Miami. So I think it's just a combination. Much better team now. Happy to be out of Miami. Quality player. Over time, he's been a good player. I just think you're getting a good version of Josh Bell hitting cleanup at 35-28. He's not Christian Walker, but he doesn't have to be at those prices. Happy to have him. Jake McCarthy and Alec Thomas are decent outfielders to work with. McCarthy giving you a strong season at 303, 375, 451. Dynamite for correlated scoring. A little bit of stolen base ability with 16 on the season. He's got 6 home runs. He's a mix and match quality player with correlated scoring upside from the heart of the lineup. It would be interesting to have him in the leadoff spot and maybe Carroll down lineup and take advantage of Carroll's power a little bit, but is what it is. Del Castillo, again, going to be super popular at that price, $2,100 for a catcher on DraftKings. Not so much on FanDuel at 26, but he's only mix and match quality over there. Junior Suarez still continuing his tear. 459 plate appearances. We're up to a 188 ISO and 17 home runs, most of which has come since like the start of July. So last month and a half, coming up on 2 months, has been just absolutely outrageous for Suarez. 9.5% barrels, 39.4% hard hits. A lot of strikeouts, a lot of inconsistency still, but at least the power came around and finally came to life. Thomas, again, for 25-24 is a mix and match outfielder, 198, 255, 374 over just 99 plate appearances, but 3 home runs, 4 steals in that sample. A little bit of ability for premium contact for DFS scoring from the left side of the plate for a cheap price. And then Geraldo Perdomo, 26-28, gets involved. 104 WRC plus at 341 on base, can steal a base, can hit a home run from time to time. Not a bad 211 plate appearances from him. We know he's streaky, but he's very cheap. Not the best way to occupy shortstop overall, but if you need a cheap shortstop, you could do worse than wrapping him around back to the top of the lineup. Brandon Pfaadt, Diamondbacks bats. Either way, 1-2. Nothing really from the Rockies side, but it's bats way above Bradley Blaylock. And it's just the guys I talked about, like, the 1, 2, 3 are my priorities. And then there's probably 4 and 5 right there. But Rocks way down the board. Pirates, speaking of downboard teams, facing Joe Musgrove, whose, again, projection is going to come down. I don't know that Musgrove's playable on 60 pitches here for 78-82. I think you just bypass it. There's too many good pitching options to mess with that. So I'm going to lower these prices as soon as the show's over, which we got to get around to doing. But 60 pitches, we're not going to get enough upside. In 49 and a third, 10 starts at the beginning of the year, he had a 5.66 ERA and a 4.33 xFIP. Those are ugly numbers for Joe Musgrove. He was giving up a bunch of premium contact and power, 11.5% barrels and 4.67% hard hits, or home runs rather. 12.6% swinging strikes is good, but a 1.48 whip is terrible. So, I mean, we didn't even have a good version of Joe Musgrove to expect to return to the mound tonight. Seems pretty limiting. Jake Woodford taking over the spot that Marco Gonzalez was originally in to start the day. There's no appeal there whatsoever. I think you just go to Padres bats. They seem really, really playable here. They've got one of the better totals on a board that does have, for a short slate, a bunch of teams above 5 in the high 4s and the mid 4s with believable potential. It's a good slate for hitting. So Woodford 71, 6,000 is just a no thank you, and we're going to take some Pods bats against. The question is Pirates bats against Joe Musgrove. Both of these lineups are in. McCutchen off the top of the lineup. Hasn't had a great season, but I mean, you can only expect so much from the veteran at this point. He still gets on base at a fairly effective clip. He can still get you for power from time to time. The role in the leadoff spot with a 335 on base is fairly secure. It's not a bad option there for correlated scoring. You can see the 16 home runs, the 174 ISO. He's kind of a medium strength power hitter now. He does have a 12.5% barrel, but just 37.7% hard hits. When you put it all together, for the pricing, he's fine. If you're going to Pirates, he's fine. He's not an appealing option outside of that. He's not a reason to go to the Pirates, but he's playable within stacks, a 109 WRC plus on the season. Brian Reynolds, 56-31, failed this as a home run pick. We would have had, 5 straight if he had hit that? We've hit, or 4 straight? Hit 3 out of the last 4, I think.
But Reynolds didn't get there for us over the weekend, but I still like the upside here. 8.75 in the home run model, 19 on the year, a 186 ISO. If you don't like him, you can grab O'Neal Cruz, who hits the ball even harder. 18.3% barrels and 54.5% hard hits for Cruz. Tons of strikeouts, 32.7%, but mashes the ball when he connects. 18 home runs, a 258, 313, 465 slash line, a 207 ISO. Creating runs 11% better than average. This is a good season out of O'Neal Cruz over 431 opportunities, with some room still, another 150 opportunities to come or so to improve it even further. So not a bad year at all. Like the upside at shortstop. Don't mind getting him at short, especially 32 on FanDuel feels a little offset, more so than the 53 on DraftKings does. 3,400 for Joey Bart and his 11.9% barrels and 41.3% hard hits over 174 plate appearances. I think you could do worse at the catcher spot today. 10 home runs for Bart in the small sample of plate appearances, a 234 ISO. Maybe finally found his footing at the major league level. Like I said the other day, sometimes it just takes catchers a little while. He was supposed to be a very high-end kid. For these prices, hitting cleanup today against a vulnerable version of Joe Musgrove and then the bullpen, I think you can go there. 3,000, 2,400 for Rowdy Tellez. It's not the best season out of Rowdy. 9 home runs and 318 plate appearances, just a 138 ISO and 90 WRC+. Strikeouts are manageable. He's not walking as much. He's not making as good contact, but it's not as diminished as it maybe seems like. It's diminished dramatically from 2 years ago. But for 3,024, if we're just trying to pick off a cheap lefty home run, it's better than Isaiah Kiner-Falefa in the next spot. IKF at 38.27 is just a mix and match option at multiple positions on both sides. He has created runs 13% better than average, but he's definitely just a correlated scoring piece. 331 on base. Yes, he's hit 7 home runs this year. He has the occasional flair for a big game, and he doesn't strike out. He puts bat on ball very, very frequently, so you get that odd output from time to time, but expectation should just be base hits, correlated scoring. Ke'Bryan Hayes, disappointing year. 42.2% hard hits is at least still a little bit good, but the barrels are way down. 4 home runs, 11 steals, a .061 ISO, and a 68 WRC+. Mix and match quality down lineup. Brian De La Cruz relegated to the 8th spot after this team acquired him. 3,600, 2,500 across sites. 18 home runs, but limited output, 236, 279, 395, a 159 ISO, and 85 WRC+. I like the power upside. He's cheap enough down the lineup, 6.20 in the home run model. You could do worse. Michael A. at 2,000, 2,300 across sites is very cheap, but has had a bad season on us this year. Last year, we got that sneaky good season, 21 homers and 13 steals. He was always cheap. He was always low-owned. Over 388 plate appearances. That vanished this year. There's really not much reason to go to him. On the pod side, Luis Arias, one of the top table setters in baseball. 306, 337, 380, a 105 WRC+. He's been diminished overall this season, but still very, very high-end upside against a pitcher like Woodford for a 4 or 5 hit day out of Arias with tons of correlated scoring upside. If you're playing Padres, you're really not skipping him for the discount. It sucks that he's a first baseman only on DraftKings, but you do have the ability to move Cronenworth to second and Solano if you want him to third. But you're skipping, because Xander at second. Oh, no Manny Machado. I forgot about that. It's an interesting configuration of players given the positioning here, but I believe you can get all those guys together. Right? First, second. No, you can't, because you got to get first, second, or third. So you can't get the top 5 exactly, but you can get some configuration of it. 53.36 for Jurickson Profar. If you told me I'd be okay with these prices at the beginning of the season, I would have laughed in your face, but I also would not have expected that he would have a 297, 396, 486 slash line, so my mistake. 188 ISO, 153 WRC+. He's holding together a very strong season this year. He's worth playing against this pitcher. Cronenworth, 51-31, easy to get to. 14 homers, a 160 ISO, a 108 WRC+. That looks a lot like the Cronenworth season I was expecting. He's been effective. He's been fine, but he's not a star. He's not a very high-end player. He's just okay. Xander Bogaerts, 47, 3,000, 271, 313, 372 slash line, just a 97 WRC+, only 5 homers and 6 steals in 297 chances. Not a strong season out of Bogaerts, but there's a lot of ability. There's a lot of history there. I think for the money, you can get there. 47 at second base on DraftKings, perfectly fine. 3,000 mixed positioning on FanDuel, totally playable. 29-27 across sites with multi-position for Solano, especially getting him now at second base on FanDuel. A lot of upside there from a guy hitting 313, 363, 436 and creating runs 30% better than average. He's got a track record of just being a line drive and on base and correlated scoring guy, but that is valuable against a pitcher of this nature. Jackson Merrill, one of the top rookies in baseball this season, 291, 323, 483 slash line, a 192 ISO, 17 home runs and 13 stolen bases, giving you a ton of output. 9.9% barrels, 43.4% hard hits. Easy enough to get to Merrill for just 45.32. Honestly, not high enough priced on either site. Peralta, mix and match player for me, 257, 320, 393, a 106 WRC plus. He's been fine. He doesn't have a ton of power, but 42.6% hard hits this year, 43.9% last year, just limited for barrels, but he can get involved for a cheap price. Ha-Sung Kim, not having the best season, 10 home runs and 21 steals is all right. 227, 327, 358, just a 99 WRC plus. Mix and match quality, but he's gotten really cheap for his ceiling at this point. And then Kyle Higashioka, the home run pick of the day. Glad he's in the lineup. 8.66 at the bottom. 14 home runs now in 177 plate appearances. Something we've been monitoring since the beginning of the year, or since Higgy started getting regular plate appearances anyway. We're up to 13.2% barrels. The hard hits are still greatly diminished. We're down 10 points worth of hard hits, but the barrels are actually higher than they've been each of the last 2 years. We liked Higgy in these seasons when he was on the Yankees for cheap catcher home run upside. He had exactly 10 in 260 chances last year and exactly 10 in 248 chances the year before. So we are literally doubling up the power from Kyle Higashioka so far this season. 297 ISO, 14 home runs in 177 chances, a 124 WRC plus. He strikes out a ton, very capable of giving you a zero in your lineup, but I promise you he's going to be low owned down the bottom of the Pods lineup today. So I like Higgy a lot, and again, home run pick of the day. This goes Padres, Pirates, would not play either pitcher. Last game up, pitching duel. I'll give you the wind is blowing out at 13 degrees, apparently, according to Labs' flawed weather reporting here. But they've got it at 61. Let's see where Roth's got the weather tonight. I think this comes from the National Weather Service, just the forecast numbers that RG publishes on their weather page. So this game with a 6:45 local start time, it's going to be 60 degrees at 6:45 in the afternoon in San Francisco today, and then it's going to go down into the mid-50s overnight. We're not going to be playing ball probably till midnight when it's going to be 56 degrees, but starting at 60 and cooling from there, not ideal. Again, the wind is blowing out a little bit. It's like a 10-mile-an-hour wind out to like left center, but that's not really going to matter. It's a definitely premium pitching conditions. We've got both these teams in the low threes, despite having some ability on these squads. We do have just Marcell Ozuna for the entire game above a 10 and just barely above a 10 with all his home run upside. You can see how limiting this spot is going up against Snell. 2.35% home run rate on a sub 30% hard hit rate. That's spectacular, right? Both of these guys, sub 30% hard hit rates. Usually we're mid 30s, 35-ish is like average. You're good at limiting premium contact. I forget who it was earlier, but he had like a 36.7, and I said he's good at limiting premium contact. These guys are both elite at it. 85.7 miles an hour of exit velo on average for Sale, 87 for Snell. 2.35% home run rate for Snell, 1.58% home run rate for Sale. Elliot Ramos leads the Giants at 7.7 in the home run model. No other Giant is above just over halfway to the magic number. A little bit more power showing for the Braves, but I mean, Matty Olson, 6.5. Austin Riley, 7.07. Limited spot for bats. Definitely would love to have either pitcher. Sale is very hard to reach at 10.5, but top of the board and one of the highest pitching projections we've had on either side all year long. 32.6% strikeouts against a team with a 23.7% strikeout rate for the projected lineup that can push higher depending on which configuration they go with. And then Snell, 31.4% strikeouts against a team with a 24.1% strikeout rate, depending on which version of the lineup they go with. That could creep into the 25s, 26s. There are a ton of strikeouts in this game. This is atrocious hitting conditions in this game. These are two of the very best left-handed pitchers in all of baseball who have both been pitching exceptionally well this season. Absolutely fire away where you can afford pitching, and this does not look like a good spot to grab contrarian bats and say, hey, I'm going to target popularity. I'm going to target premium pitching. Just doesn't look like a good idea. If you do choose to do that, I would lean toward the Braves against Snell. He's been a little bit more vulnerable. 4.31 ERA, but a 3.39 xFIP. Obviously threw a no-hitter 2 starts ago. Sale for the season, 2.75 ERA, 2.60 xFIP. Snell walks a few more hitters. He can be the less efficient of these two pitchers given the walks. But more often than not, you're just extracting upside from Snell. But the Braves, if you start that stack, you go into Jorge Soler off the top, 52-33, 16 home runs, a 196 ISO, maybe course corrected for the season while in Coors Field the other day. Hit a couple of home runs there. Austin Riley, 58-34, 18 home runs from him, a 211 ISO. Has normalized for the season, but we're probably coming up short of 30 home runs, which he's been over for each of the last 3. That said, the premium contact numbers, 15.2% barrels and 53.1% hard hits, are actually up over last year and normalized to 2 years ago. Ozuna, 61-38, has 35 home runs and a 289 ISO, one of the best power bats in all of baseball. Has been absolutely fantastic for this team all season. The only guy in this game above a 10 in the home run model. Not to say nobody's homering in this one, but it looks like a really difficult spot to find power. Ozuna's your most likely guy, but it's a bad spot, and it's a very high price. You're not getting any kind of discount for this spot. Olsen, 55-33, a little bit underpriced for the underperformance all year. 198 ISO, up to 20 home runs, finally a 102 WRC+. He's been okay, but we've seen him a lot better than this. Still playable, but not in this spot, not in this ballpark, not against this pitcher. Orlando Arcia, mix and match quality shortstop, 41-26, 11 homers on the season, but a 76 WRC+. Sean Murphy, a lot of power from the catcher spot, but again, terrible spot to find power today. 4,500, 2,600. If you're going to Braves, you probably include Sean Murphy, but not a good option. 4.41 for Adam Duvall for 3,200 in the home run model, 2,500 across on FanDuel. 10 home runs, but 181, 243, 319 doesn't seem ideal. 30% strikeout rate doesn't seem ideal to throw at Blake Snell. Whit Merrifield and Eli White, totally skippable at the bottom of the lineup. Merrifield's just low strikeout, high walk, but doesn't really do anything with it. Just a 299 on base, a 74 WRC+, not even providing correlated scoring. On the Giants side, if you choose to target Chris Sale, you're a braver man than I. Tyler Fitz appropriately at 53-36, but not appropriate for the matchup against Chris Sale in this ballpark in these hitting conditions. He's just had a great 181 plate appearances, 12 homers, 12 steals, 303 ISO, 177 WRC+. Elliot Ramos has 17 home runs, a 208 ISO, a 134 WRC+ on the season. Mikey Conforto and Matt Chapman are playable parts if you're going to this team. All 4 of those guys above double-digit barrel rates and well above even 10. 11.4 and 11.1 for Fitz and Conforto, 15.6 and 13% for Ramos and Chapman. Well above 40% hard hits for 3 out of those 4 guys, 45% hard hits for 3 out of the 4 guys there. A lot of power upside for sure, but again, Sale is just absolutely fantastic at limiting it, possibly the best in baseball. I think this season that's demonstrable with these numbers. Top of my head, I can't think of anybody better. Mark Canha for 42-28 is just like an on-base and correlated scoring play from the 5 spot. Not ideal. If he's hitting leadoff, that probably makes more sense, and then put Tyler Fitz 5, but we'll see what they end up doing. That's the only spot I would really want Mark Canha is just lead off for me. Get on base, set the table for these guys. That makes so much more sense. Put him here, move Fitz, even if you move Fitz to 3, or even 2, you could move Fitz to 2 and drop Ramos down to 5. Not that these guys are bad at getting on base, but it's just that's really all that Canha's giving you. So might as well put him in the leadoff spot. At our Encarnacion, 32-25, 293, 53, 484, a 194 ISO. He's giving you quality 34 plate appearances. He's got a home run and a stolen base on the board already this season. Like the looks of the profile when we took a peek at him last week when he first got called up. 32-25. I think we could do worse if we were stacking Giants, but we're not because Chris Sale's on the mound. Yaz, lefty, not a good spot. Casey Schmidt, no thank you. And Kirk Casale is another no thank you, the bottom of the Giants lineup. This very firmly goes Chris Sale, then Blake Snell. They're the top 2 pitchers on the board. And I really don't want either of these teams in terms of the bats, but if I had to take a team, it would be the Braves. That was your slate. It took us a while to get through it today. Only 8 games, 2.5 hours. Not efficient. Chris Snail, I had to do it one last time. Chris Sale and Blake Snell, 11-2 and 10-2 on FanDuel. Obviously, the $1,000 difference makes up for that projection gap in the median. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I don't think there's that significant of a ceiling gap between those two pitchers. On DraftKings 10-5-93, it's the exact same thing. Luis Gil is really expensive on FanDuel. 10-8 is more expensive than 9,000 is on DraftKings. It's a phenomenal spot. I don't fully believe in the pitcher. If it was a lot of these other teams, if he was facing, let's say even the Pirates, I'd be at least a little bit more hesitant. I'd be putting the asterisk on there saying he's outperforming his talent. But there are a ton of strikeouts in that lineup. He's got strikeout stuff. He's been good enough to get by all season long. And the White Sox don't even have Luis Robert in the lineup. Fire away. On DraftKings at 9,000, he makes a ton of sense. That said, you can have Brandon Pfaadt against Colorado on the road for 86. Love the spot at 92 on FanDuel if I can get there. 86 on DraftKings. Going to be really popular, but a killer option. You can use them as a high-price SP2, a low-price SP1. I have no issues if you wanted to go 86.77. 86.58. Get really creative with it. I've come around a little bit on that Bowden Francis 58. Pablo Lopez, just facing a good Royals team that's fairly low strikeout. That's the only issue for Pablo. He's also having a mediocre season for Pablo. Not mediocre. Mediocre strong. He's having a good season. It's just a tough opponent. 97-92 doesn't entirely wipe out the disadvantage from the opponent by comparison to some of the guys at the top. So Pablo just effectively lands here, but he's very playable. Freddie Peralta, tough matchup against the Dodgers, kind of limiting there, but definitely a very, very good pitcher who could easily go off and win the slate. Clay Kershaw, 8,077. We haven't seen the full deployment of innings yet, but I think we do have upside if he's efficient to 6. More likely than not, we're dealing with 5, maybe 5 and change. He's just very, very cheap. The Brewers are a good lineup and a good challenge for him, but that's offset. All of that is offset by the pricing. Brady Singer, believable enough against the Twins. I do think there's upside there. 88-84, not mispriced, playable, but just some other guys around him a little bit more appealing for price. Musgrove's coming down from those prices. Don't play from those projections. Don't play him. 60 pitches is not enough. Tyler Mahle against Boston, just a really rough opponent, but a good enough price, and I think we will get the depth out of Mahle, at least to pay off the DraftKings price. Bowden Francis, though, for 5,800, definitely in the bargain bin against the Gettable Angels lineup, but they are very much in the bin on the other side in the hitting bargain bin against him. They're showing some power upside and seem like a playable value spot. Probably going to be a little bit more popular than he is on the mound. Bayo, pretty rough against Texas. Jake Woodford, hard no against San Diego on both sides. Davis Daniel, pretty rough against Toronto for a $7,200 price that I don't think he's necessarily earned against a low strikeout Blue Jays team that is better than they've been all season. Bradley Blaylock, hard no against Arizona. Kai Busch, definitely not against the Yankees. Yankees chalk of the day in terms of the bats. Even for 4,000, I have difficulty envisioning success with Bradley Blaylock. Home run board. You can see we've got a absolute ton of Yankees up toward the top of the board, including 3 out of the top 4 spots with Judge, Soto, and Stanton. A couple of Twins, though. We talked about how cheap the Twins are. Well, actually, maybe it's only one Twin. It is. It's just Royce Lewis hanging out up there. Where's everybody else? Yeah, we won't bother. Remember that the Twins are very, very cheap in that spot. Here, this is the easier way to do it. Maybe not. Who the fuck are they playing? Blue Jays? No. I've completely forgotten who the Twins are playing. It doesn't matter. The Royals. I was just talking about Pablo against the Royals. I should have remembered that. These guys could be a little bit higher. Singer's been good at keeping the ball in the yard, limiting home runs. But those are some pretty decent power bats, so these might be a little bit low just for the quality that these guys individually provide. But the quality about the Twins was how cheap they are among those good hitters at the top. And even if you're not hitting home runs against Singer, they can capitalize in other ways. So I think the Twins are interesting for how cheap they are on that DraftKings board. Talia, your only really appealing Rockies bat. Ozuna, you're only appealing Braves batting again. Just doesn't look like a hitting spot in San Francisco today. Not a ton of guys above 10. Marte from the Diamondbacks, again, not going to be nearly as popular as that home run mark might suggest. And then you get bolt-on pieces like Jock Peterson at not enough popularity in that lineup. Josh Bell at not enough popularity in that lineup. So the Diamondbacks do have appeal. I'm going to strongly consider them as one of my 2 stacks today. With that in mind, you guys, you absolutely rock. I'll see if there's any questions or anything to wrap up in the chat. Dennis wants to make Chris Snail a cartoon snail that wants to be pitcher, but everyone assumes because he's a snail he can't throw fast. I like it. And then he gets up on the mound and he actually doesn't throw fast. It's like the opposite of Rookie of the Year. Trey's looking to fade the Yanks and go to another small stack with Arizona. I think that makes some sense. He likes the entire Arizona lineup. I think that makes sense, buddy. Yeah, the pod's diminished a little bit by no Manny Machado, but still looks like a pretty good lineup there. Dennis asks, Terry, do you have a Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App viewers can send money to when if they have a good DFS night? And in fact, I do. If you scroll down in the description for this show, there is kickback information, and I can pop it onto the ticker real quick as we end the show. That'll also inform you about our guys over at acemind.io. Do not forget to check them out. Sims, optimizers, critical for football and basketball. For me, it's less so, but they're obviously very high-end and usable tools, and guys from all over the industry have been succeeding with them for baseball. I've just been more on the one line up front for baseball this season, and just enjoying building that way and doing it by hand. But Sims are a very high-quality tool for baseball as well. It's just where they really come in for me. Optimizing and simulation for NFL and NBA. So going to be getting back there, but promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, over at acemind.io gets you 20% off your first month from those guys. So check them out. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. @digitalbeat21 is just me, and I don't say anything more on that one than I do on the rotoscouts one. But follow the rotoscouts to build up audience, and me if you want to. Retweet and like those things when they pop up. It does help the site a little bit. Hop into our Discord if you're not in there already. I'll drop a link in chat as we wrap things up. And other than that, I have basically nothing else to say to you people. I got to get out of here and get some lineups updated. There's your Discord link. Good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. Let's see another winner. Tweet it out at me. If you do hit something, drop it in the Discord so everybody can congratulate you. I am struggling getting out of this show with my words. Have a great night out there, gang. Somebody go win something. I'll see you tomorrow.